Tonight, for the Champ Car World Series, we visit a road course unlike any other. For the first time this season, it's a full street circuit, and we take to the streets of Long Beach, California. Welcome to the Long Beach Grand Prix. We return from our Easter break with the twists and turns that bring challenges unlike any course we've seen throughout the schedule so far. Welcome you back live on ABN Esports, and we hope you enjoy tonight's coverage. We're just getting started here in Long Beach. Practice, 4 minutes left on the session. Looks like a total of 28 drivers registered. We're at just about maximum capacity here, and defending winner at this circuit, Bruno Miranda, at the top of the board. I'm David Kreutz, and today I'm joined alongside Olivia, Hayward, and Taylor Mills as we get set to go. A few changes to the package which came very recent, notably the type of alternate tire we have. It's going to be a slightly different look. You're going to see the green walls rather than red walls for drivers, and their alternate strategy, mandatory compound swap throughout these 56 laps. All in all, though, there's a lot more different than the color on the tires as we take to Long Beach for the first time in 2024. Before, of course, practice ends here, I think the big discussion is that change. How are our drivers going to adapt as we look forward here? Let's get things going and start talking about what it's going to take to succeed here in California.
The name of the game tonight is gonna be position through attrition. You gotta keep your car in one piece if you wanna move forward in the field. You gotta be able to keep turning laps and not spend time in pit lane. So, yeah, it's a very tight course. We've seen plenty of instances here when real life series go here. We've seen, the NASCAR Class A series came here a few weeks ago on iRacing, and there's plenty of cars to go around. But with 28 cars taking the start here, and maybe more trying to qualify their way in, there's going to be a lot of chaos, and you've got to keep a cool head. You've got to keep consistent and make sure that you're turning laps that are just under the limit, not over, just under.
Something else we're going to have to keep an eye on tonight that we don't normally have to at other circuits, and we barely talk about because it's never usually that big a factor, is the placement of the pit exit line. Typically, you've got plenty of space and plenty of time to get through it, get past it, and it's normally in quite a convenient spot on the inside of the circuit, certainly at the ovals that we're used to going to. But here at Long Beach, it's right on the line you want to be taking through turn one. So not only are you going to want to be careful of it when you're coming out of pit lanes, if you cut that, that's a drive through. You're going to want to be careful of it when you're on your hot lap as well. So if you go too far over that line, you're going to get yourself a slowdown penalty, and that's going to be your lap ruined, whether that's in the race or in qualifying.
Well, it's a slowdown at best. At worst, you could collect some who's on the way out pit lane. That's why they're strict about that rule. And yeah, gotta be careful into turn one, especially.
We're going to talk about that first turn, of course. 56 laps. We don't need to have any cautions tonight, of course, for any race, but that's always a tricky segment. You get very narrow in, and it's going to be all about whether or not we make that first sector work. That sets the tone for the rest of the race right now. We're watching our 28 drivers get to grips with the track, and we mentioned, of course, before the broadcast got going, one driver we're looking at in particular is Bruno Miranda, who is not only our defending champion, but also the defending race winner here at the Long Beach Street Circuit, and he's returned for what should be his first race of the season. Registered once previously in this campaign, however, has not taken the green flag to this point. And right now, Miranda is the quickest driver on the board by about 1/10 of a second over Parker Alexander, then Austin Farr in third. A few drivers making their very first start of the season. We'll discuss all of our rookies of the race as this night goes on. However, Bruno in particular caught our eyes given his previous success. That's one story I think we have to keep an eye on here, is with 10 seconds left in practice, he is our fastest man in the session.
Yeah, of course. Viewers might not be able to see the full details of this being in the Dark Age, but in Season 4 in 11 starts, Bruno Miranda took 7 wins and 9 podiums. And the road courses especially were where he made hay. Like, he is a very, very quick driver on the road courses, consistent and when that name popped up in the entry list, you pay attention, because that is someone to watch out for.
Saying that though, Olivia, we did have a few drivers matching him most of the way through that practice session until right at the end there. Austin Farr and Parker Alexander were right up there in terms of one-lap pace. So maybe they're going to be someone to keep an eye on in this race to kind of take it to Bruno Miranda.
We're now keeping an eye on the entirety of the field. Qualifying is open tonight. It's a half-hour session, and it's going to be all about burning fuel as we get to grips with our brand new tire strategy. It's not necessarily entirely different. There's one big change, and it comes down to the visuals. For a lot of drivers, they'll be trying out the green wall tires for the first time in their iRacing careers. That's a point we want to hit upon here as the qualifying session goes on. You might be used to our red Firestones, which you've seen as alternates all throughout this season to this point at our road courses such as Watkins Glen or the Charlotte Roval. However, tonight, of course, coming off of the Roval where it was the primaries that dominated, it's a little bit more up in the air now as a street compound makes its way to the iRacing platform, something we haven't seen to this point, and it looks like now these champ cars getting used to another type of rubber. And the street circuits exclusively get this green compound, so Long Beach, the perfect testing ground as drivers make it around for their very first laps here in qualifying.
Yeah, so it's interesting to note that the Waiuli green sidewall tires, the Waiuli rubber is just on the sidewall of the tires, mind. In Sim, it doesn't actually have any performance change yet. That doesn't mean that I've got some sort of insider information that I know it's going to change, but there's every chance that we get an update where the green sidewall tires actually perform differently in Sim as they do in real life. But yeah, so the tire wall itself is, as I say, constructed entirely from this Waiuli rubber desert shrub, which is grown by Bridgestone in Eloy, Arizona. Mind you though, it is only the sidewall that's made of this much more sustainable material, and the main tread is still made using latex from the Hevea trees. So the idea is it reduces the environmental impact of making the tyres as it requires less reharvesting than traditional rubber sources. As well as that, it reduces the risk of relying on a single source of rubber, which of course helps bring the cost down, as well as localizes production of the tyre entirely within the US. So a positive change not only for the environment, but a smart business decision for Bridgestone.
And while we've been having that, well, it's a very interesting science lesson, and sort of taught into the way that Bridgestone and Firestone are looking towards the future. We have already had a few instances in practice. Tutter Sawyer is, by the look of things, out of the session already, having an incident in turn 1 on his first flying. Like Carmen Sienna with a big hit to the wall, limping it back to pit lane, where of course you can take a new car, but only in the pit lane. If you're not able to make it back to pit lane under your own power, and you're forced to tow off the track, that is your qualifying session done. So, with potentially knockout qualifying on the horizon, if we see any more drivers enter the session, that is going to be a big concern for Tutter Sawyer, who is going to have a 0 on the board in this session. I would also like to note, in terms of qualifying strategy, that these cars do start with a full tank of fuel, and so if you do have to take a reset in the pit lane, that will also add additional weight back into the car to get a fresh car with a full tank, and that might mean you can't get the optimal pace out of the car by the end of the session.
Yeah, we know these cars can run about 18 laps on a tank of fuel, and it's going to be around the end of that window where you're going to want to try and set your best times, because that's when the car's at its lightest and when it's going to perform best on these alternate compound of tyres. It does take about 15-20 minutes or so, possibly even more than that, to burn off the amount of fuel that you need to get down to a proper qualifying fuel level. And it's just one of those little challenges that's unique to the Champ Car series. Because of course in any other series you could probably just take out that fuel and go get those hot laps in.
Looks like a few drivers.
One of the changes that was made quite late in sort of development of this season to the road courses, to move it to an open qualifying session rather than the typical lone qualifying 2-lap run that you'll see in official series. And it does just add this extra layer of strategy. It also makes it a lot easier to spectate, because if you see a car on track, you can see everyone else and see how their times are setting up. Whereas in a lone session, you've got to sort of teleport between universes almost to see what everyone else is up to.
Looking right now at our timing sheets, Parker Alexander quickest by about 1/10 of a second. Bruno Miranda in second, and Austin Farr, one of the usual suspects at these circuits, he is in third. Now, we're talking about Bruno Miranda, one of the rookies of this race. A few others, though, who are up inside of the top 10. Looking at Frankie Wynn, who's right now going to be into pit road. Note the green on the tire here, so trying out that alternate compound. Also going to be Pacey Widgeon in the 00 down and in as well, so could be another driver to keep an eye out for him. Braden Holt, who is in 6th in that category at the same time on the circuit. So we got the 00 and the 02, who look to be teammates with the paint schemes and such. They are 5th and 6th. Frankie Wynn going to be in 4th. So a lot of these drivers here who are getting themselves ready, have gotten themselves, at least to this point, up high in position in qualifying. Gotta wonder, though, is there anything left in the sleeves of these drivers? We're only 7 minutes in the session. We're only going to get quicker times as this goes on, as we should see drivers dumping out fuel in these early laps, setting themselves up to go lighter at the end, and we're not even a third of the way through the session, as we see now Braden Holt flying by the start-finish line. 20 drivers have taken a lap, going back to Alex Martin here. Callie Height and Carmen Sienna have attempted laps, and we're looking for a few others from 23rd on back to put times down. Looks like just about everyone has gotten on the track tonight, but not everyone in this session, and you gotta wonder, are there any surprises left as Parker Alexander leads Bruno Miranda by just about 1/10 of a second here. Miranda right now going to be coming out of the final hairpin and on the way for another new lap.
Yeah. Parker Alexander looking to be one of those threats to try and take it to Bruno Miranda tonight. Again, these two drivers very close in the last practice session, and Parker Alexander has been pretty rapid in the last few races in ABN Champ Car, but I'm really looking forward to seeing what they can do tonight here at Long Beach.
Bruno Miranda racing for Raw Esports for this event today. Those two teammates making their first starts, Pacey Widgeon and Braden Holt, racing for PBR Racing, and Frankie Wynn, a driver for Mirai United VRT, one of a few VTubers now in the Champ Car World Series, and one of a couple of drivers assuming their point of view tonight. So, of course, this is a place to catch all the coverage, but if you've got a second monitor, pull open another tab, go and have a look through the field and watch them on boards.
Well, now that we say that, I gotta wonder, what is the stream link to get the number 16s on board? Something I didn't quite know before we got in here. We discussed it, one of the drivers coming in with a POV stream, but maybe we can get that in for the chat room. I'm not quite sure where to get that information, though, as POV gives out a lot more.
I'll pull them up and post them all.
Gotcha. Awesome, awesome. Now, think about those POV streams. They pick up stuff we don't quite see. Even if we look on board, now take a look at our onboard cameras right now. You can see we have the gears, we have the revs per minute. However, not all that information on the dashboard is getting updated consistently. That's something we can't keep an eye out for, because these drivers not sending all the aspects of telemetry. The onboard shots are going to give a little more info as Frankie jumps up to 3rd. Maybe another driver to watch at the front of the field here through 2nd gear, and you can see the gears still climbing. Can't quite watch the fuel, but of course, assuming most drivers going for the strategy of dumping now and waiting to get the best laps in later.
Just as you were talking there, David, Pedro Blabel's had a bit of an off at turn 1. Sideways into the barrier and bent suspension. If they can't get that car safely back to the pit lane, that's going to be their session over.
Watching the 89 of Lyle Exier make Of course, another trip down a pit road. 10th on the board for Zia right now as pit road is busy once again. Occupied as Craig Forsyth is going to fly by. Forsyth the winner at Watkins Glen, and drivers still making their way down and in. When it comes to retirement in this session, don't think we've seen more than one as Tucker Sawyer looks to be off the circuit. And it looks like now damage there for the number 8, and it is big. Take a look at that rear wing as we catch up to Pedro Bebleu here, and now crab walking, and it's substantial damage. Not quite sure if it's going to be possible to make it all the way around.
You know, David, Long Beach is a really unique venue because we have quite a few series that come here. Obviously, we're coming here tonight. IMSA race here. NASCAR are looking to add a race onto the schedule as well. Formula Drift use the final sector as well, and they are the first motorsport event here every year. But I didn't think Formula Drift was on tonight, but it looks like we're going to see a car going sideways through the final sector.
Oh my god.
It had to be done. This is the biggest bout of left hand down I've ever seen in a single seater. That is a perfect like 100 drift through the first quarter. Oh, it's a spin. That's going to be a 0. Good effort though from Pedro Bebleu.
And this is something we maybe have failed to see the forest for the trees when we talk about strategy in this qualifying session of trying to burn fuel off, make multiple runs. I think most importantly, you need to get time on the board. Like, if you can set a solid banker lap, even if it is on high fuel, that gives you the ability to just push more later on in the session because you know you have the backup. And I think that is going to be worth more than any lighter fuel load here. Just having that confidence to push it right to the edge and not quite use the walls as a guide, because there's 0 reps on the walls will invalidate your qualifying lap, but get about as close as you can to that.
I am happy to report that Pedro Bebleu's made it back to pit lane and safely got themselves a new car. Very impressive bit of driving from them there to mostly stay out of everyone's way and get themselves back out there on track to try and set a decent time.
We do have an extended qualifying session tonight to bear in mind the potential for increased traffic. With such a large field, such a tight track, and cars making out to pit lane as Austin Farr goes top of the board. The first car into the 106s, and by some margin, and Bruno Miranda will follow into the 106s in second place. We have 30 minutes, up from our usual 20 for road courses, and so that does give drivers plenty of time to get the fuel down to Butterfly. As Bruno Miranda actually has had a spin coming out of turn 1, it looks like.
And it's a huge shuffle into the first turn because that's Bryce Saucier who had trouble, and everyone's trying to get away. Looking now, looks like inside of our grasslands, it's going to be Elias Flores, and now you can see them all trying to get through on Saucier. There's Lyle Exir, and as everyone barely makes it by, Bryce Saucier almost made more contact with Bruno Miranda. The 07 is all but destroyed here. Not quite sure what can be done.
Yeah, to show for just how tricky that turn 1 braking zone is. If it was called in a rally, it would be a left 2 Titans on exit. And a lot of our guys in the field finding that out the hard way today. That tyre wall on exit, as much as it is soft and squishy, it's not very forgiving for that front right suspension.
Apologies for the missed call on the car stricken sideways there. I'm too used to Bruno Miranda racing in a green livery. As it stands, racing in the red and white tonight. And yeah, Bryce Saucier trying to make its way back to pit lane, but I mean, that's a perfect example of why we have this extended qualifying session. You don't know what's going to happen with other cars, and so keeping giving you a chance to back off a lap and go again is necessary here, as we had Zach McBride, looks like it might be out of the session here after an incident in the final sector. But yeah, Austin Farr with wind damage through some of the carnage here. Looks like Bruno Miranda's car is still in one piece, and so maybe it's just superficial wind damage to be fixed in a pit stop with a fresh set of tyres, but it could be advantage Miranda if Austin Farr needs to take a fresh car to fix some wheel alignment issues.
Bar's going to be down and in here, looking at that front end in particular. And for our provisional pole sitter, it's a gap of 3/10 over Bruno Miranda right now. Looks like Miranda does get away unscathed. That's going to be, of course, a bit of a slower lap, but it's a 109.7. With that being said, doesn't quite look like it was validated, of course, not being quicker. So now trying to pick up the pace once again. We're about halfway into our qualifying session for Bruno Miranda and company. Mo Perry, one of the few drivers to not step foot on the track, now the only driver who has not made his way on. The reason being, looks like some continued troubles with being connected to the session, just disconnected due to some upload packet loss, and Perry's back again. Mo's been quick in qualifying for the past few races. Maybe an opportunity to get a good starting spot, but some continued internet troubles which have gone on since what looked to be the start of practice. So Perry still fighting to get in the session here, just hasn't quite worked out. Bruno Miranda going to be second, and it's going to be now Parker Alexander in third. Ruby Acosta is up into fourth and going to be preceding Frankie Wynn. Pedro Babel, for his very first lap, moves into sixth. So a good recovery from what was a huge drift circuit for the number 8. Makes it up just outside of the top 5, and of course, making that move, getting that comfortable lap in, going to allow Pedro to maybe push a bit further once again without the fear of starting at the back of the field. And now that he has a lap in, there's no chance of falling further than about 25th, although it's unlikely everyone in the field has that speed or anything even close here. Pedro within about a second and a half of our pole sitter now.
To string a couple of points together very quickly, one driver we haven't spoken too much about this session is car 83, last week's race winner Emily Howe, currently sat 12th in the standings. Now, we know her as a bit of an oval specialist, but she has been spotted in a couple of IMSA sessions over the last week or so, racing at Circuit Algarve in one of the GT3s, perhaps as a way to diversify her portfolio, gain some more experience on the road side of things. But I have just been sat here watching her do practice standing starts, because of course, unique to Long Beach for this season, we do have a standing start for all of these cars here tonight, as to avoid a bit of a concertina effect up at the hairpin. So Emily Howe making the most of this extended qualifying session to try and perfect her start, because turn 1 is going to be, well, the race start and turn 1 are going to be really important tonight.
Yeah, its main justification for this rule in Champ Car, all street circuits in the future are planned to be standing starts. This used to be the case for all road courses in general, but given some mishaps in the past that I may have been the cause of one of, we've moved back to rolling starts for most road course races, but street circuits are the exception, and I think the main reason is the Long Beach hairpin. Quite possibly the worst corner in motorsport. Leave your thoughts below. But yeah, you can't pace too wide through there with any sort of consistency or safety, and so in this case the standing start is the lesser of two evils, but drivers being unfamiliar with it, maybe needing to make sure they have it down before the race start. There will be a warm-up session to assist with that later on, but hopefully everyone can get through in one piece, because a lap 1 caution is not the ideal way to start a race here.
The worst corner in motorsport is a very, very bold statement. Perhaps a topic of discussion for later.
This track has 10 really good corners that I think have a nice flow to them and a real challenge, and then I just don't like that final corner. It has Monaco vibes. I think actually the hairpin at Monaco and the Long Beach hairpin are taking at about the same speed, about 30 mile an hour. Which to me is too slow for a race car. You want to see these things ripping around and not crawling.
I can't say I disagree, but I might have to think on this for a minute. David, do you have an instant reaction as to what the worst corner in motorsport is?
When I think the worst circuit, which goes also to the point of the worst turn, I'm not a fan of these new street circuits which are being used in F1. I feel like we should go to a real circuit to begin with. That's my first point. The worst first turn. I don't like any turn in Miami.
Never mind turn 1.
I don't think I like any turn in Miami. I think they would be worse, regardless. That new street
That
circuit.
chicane at the top of that hill.
I don't. Yeah.
That thing is awful.
I don't feel the vibe for that or Las Vegas, but I feel like Miami's particularly disappointing. There's a bit of a shuffle stack in. Braden Holt got damage, and looks like one more getting damaged at the same time. And Sophie Connell. Sorry to drag back to the racing action there, but
How dare we?
How
dare we talk about the race?
How dare we? Yes, I'm taking the Miami Street Circuit.
Trouble with Bruno Miranda was passing a car into turn 1 of Pacey Wygen, and Wygen just lost the rear tyres and made contact with the rear right. I think Miranda's gotten away with it, but that's immediately lap invalidated through no fault of his own. Just an unfortunate moment coming down towards turn 1. We were talking about the pit lane line to watch out for earlier, but gotta be ready for anything here. Anything could happen. Yeah, obviously we had a 30-minute session, and as we mentioned, the fact that we're burning off fuel as the session goes on means that you do want to be setting these hot laps at the end. So the times that are on the board are important because it's what lets you set those faster laps. But we're expecting the time to start getting real quick now. With that being said, Austin Farr, it looks like, did have to take a car reset to fix that damage, and so does not have that advantage of low fuel that potentially Bruno Miranda might have, as long as Miranda didn't take any lasting damage from that turn 1 incident. So the 37, who has improved, but not quite enough to take pole position, could be looking to make that charge now in the final 8 minutes of the session. Those two really are cut above the rest of the field, 8/10 between those two and everyone else, with now 26 cars setting lap times, the only two not setting times. Those two that we mentioned have retired from the qualifying session before getting a timed lap in. Elias Flores down right on the 110 window. That's where the lowest end of our times is. Top two, well into the 106s.
The gap between our top two qualifiers right now is 18 hundredths of a second. Bruno Miranda, I would think, has the better opportunity to go for that faster lap, but I gotta wonder about another driver who we gotta look back at as well. Maybe not Parker Alexander, but is there anyone that can maybe match the two up in front? Frankie wins about a 10th off of Parker Alexander. Alexander off the circuit right now, so even though we saw he had speed, doesn't like he will go to try to go back under the 106 bracket. Frankie Wynn has improved about 0.3 of a second in this session to get a 107.5. Maybe a chance for a low 107 as Wynn's going to make it in once again at pit road. Braden Holt looking quick as well, although I feel it does come down to these two drivers we've been looking at, and Austin Farr, even though with the buffer, doesn't have the best opportunity to burn that fuel with only 6 minutes to go. Looks like now Christina Ryan can get right out of the way for the 52 as Miranda, he's picking up the pace again. Last time by for Bruno was not a validated lap as it looks like he went down to pit road and he's on the move once again here. Gotta wonder, is this the lap we've been looking for? Is he gonna wait one more, or do we got time as we got trouble? And that's one driver nearly in the wall, Elias Flores, with some continued troubles ever since the incident with Bryce Saucier. It looks like he has been all out of whack and his suspension is destroyed. I think that's perhaps his session, although he gets going again. We'll see whether or not this Ascent Esports 71 can make it back to pit road.
Yeah, this track is a constant assault of corners for the entire 1 minute and 6+ seconds you're spending around it on a qualifying lap. Even though we've got an extended qualifying session where you have to burn off the fuel to go fast at the end of your run, as we watch Elias Flores just nose into that wall again. We've seen cars off there before. It's so hard to get into a rhythm because as I say, of the constant assault of corners. And we're seeing a lot of that today. We're seeing people not quite slipping into like the feeling of the circuit itself. Perhaps trying to use a little bit more track space than there is, or in some cases not even using enough. It's a lot of risk and reward at Long Beach because your apexes are walls. Your corner exits are walls. We've got no runoff, no curbing that you can utilize to go fast and keep the car safe. You've got to make that judgment call yourself, because if you take a little bit too much, you're going to be in the wall, and that's going to be your session over.
Bruno Miranda went 100th off his personal best on that lap. This lap looks like another push lap. It could be the case that these green sidewall tyres light that one warm-up lap and then a hot lap to really get the energy out of them, but no, to come back down pit lane, give it one more try. We'll have time to take this extra set of tyres and maybe one more of note in the race. There is a limited set number of tyre sets. You have 6 total. We shouldn't be getting towards that limit. That limit does not apply to practice or qualifying. If you can keep turning laps and keep making stops, you can put on as many of those green sidewall tyres as you like to try and get yourself that one perfect lap to put you on pole position. And Bruno Miranda already off and away, the crew just put on those 4 tyres on. And no fuel going into these cars unless you need it to make it to the session checker. And with 4 minutes to go, this is Bruno's last chance to try and make a charge for pole position. Austin Farr hasn't been making much challenge for it. Although, of course, has the chance to push now. There's not much risk to it at this point. You've got your banker lap on the board, a very solid banker lap as it is. And you may as well throw everything at the track here. 3.5 minutes, and Austin Farr is on a flying lap, Bruno Miranda on an out lap here. And Lily Peletier sharp up to 3rd as we were talking. That is a very impressive lap from the 18 car. Let's start on the 2nd row and bumping Cranky Win down to the 3rd row for the time being.
Yeah, just thinking back to our previous road course, I believe was the Roval at Charlotte Motor Speedway.
Yeah.
We saw some really good pace out of Lily Peletier Sharp during that race. I said her name right this time. But she wasn't quite able to show it because of the absolutely dominant performance of Austin Farr. Now, we know Austin's quick, especially on road courses, because he took the Charlotte Roval win with ease, but it's almost safe to say he didn't quite have the same competition that he's going to have tonight, with Bruno Miranda nipping at his heels throughout this entire qualifying session. Qualifying is one thing, but stringing a race together is a completely different monster. But we know that both of these guys can do it, so it is going to be a straight fight between these two tonight. Assuming they both don't go out at turn 1, like what happened to our two race contenders, like what happened to our contenders at the Charlotte Roval. I've said it now. It's a counter jinx. I've acknowledged it might happen before it happens. As Bruno Miranda getting very close to the wall on the inside of turn 8 there, with a car spun around on exit. Not a good spot for him, but he almost used that car as an apex. Hard down on the gears now, clipping that apex on the inside, not using too much of the track on the left-hand side there. Getting all over those flats painted on curves as he goes out nice and wide to set up for another lap. A lot of these guys doing that, going really deep into the hairpin to give themselves the biggest run they can down to the start-finish line.
Yeah, you want your speed to be as high as possible at the stripe at the start. Like we see drivers on oval often run high in turns 3 and 4 to build up that speed. I've seen at Knock Hill in Scotland in F4 cars, that's the strat you run right on the outside of the final hairpin. Bruno Miranda, leaving nothing on the table now, has this lap and maybe one more to try and take pole position off Austin Farr, who currently has the spot by less than 0.2 of a second. I do want to quickly note here, Austin Farr and Olivia Peletier Sharp got those comfortable 1-2 finishes at Charlotte Roval by starting on the primary tyre and using that as the preferred tyre in the race. Everyone at the top is qualifying on the alternates here. You do have to start on this tyre, but I don't think people will mind. I think this is the preferred tyre for this race, as Bruno Miranda continuing to give it everything a little bit too much through turn 10, had a little bit of a slide, and it looks like he's going to declare his session over unless we have an absolute miracle from the cars behind. That'll be Austin Farr taking your pole position today at Long Beach.
Farr gets to return to the line, and the checkered flag will drop in qualifying. Looks like a few other drivers are going here. Not all too many. Looking at the pit road being especially busy as drivers come in, Austin Farr included. And it looks like now Alex Martin coming to line. So is Christina Ryan at the line for Martin. That will be a 110.755. Christina Ryan a 109.525. So not room to gain for both of them. You see there Braden Holt, and it looks like now the only driver we're looking at is the number 52 of Austin Farr again. Pit road looks to be entirely packed with drivers who are not ready to go for another qualifying lap because that session just about over. Looks like Farr has the pole position, and our qualifying grouping is just about complete. Tucker Sawyer and Zach McBride, the only two drivers without times, and by a margin of 1,800 still, Austin Farr is your pole sitter in California.
A disappointing qualifying session for our championship leader, Emily Howe. Sat down in 14th place on the grid. That's way down in the bottom half of the field, and if she wants to maintain her championship lead tonight, she's going to have to make some moves. Expect some aggression into turn 1 especially.
I think she'll have an okay job keeping the lead in this race. Currently leading by about 30 points over her roommate Christina Ryan. But I think the driver to look out for is Austin Farr, who is not much further behind at all, but has much fewer race starts. And each car has had 4 drop weeks in the championship. The final round, a double points event at Indianapolis, is excluded from that. That will always count. But you have 4 of your worst weeks or your off weeks that get struck from the record. And so as we move through this final phase of the season towards the Arrowhead 500, Austin Farr could close that gap rapidly. Looking very strong at pretty much every venue. The only real blip was that Las Vegas race where a lot of cars had trouble in the bid one. But with Austin Farr starting on pole position here, it's not about what happens this week, it's about what happens 2-3 weeks down the line. And if I'm Emily Howe, I'm worried. I'm very worried right now.
Speaking of Austin Farr, I'm going to start the picks conversation early. And I'm going to pick Austin Farr straight away before any of you guys take that pick from me. He's been super reliable all season so far. Multiple time race winner already, including one of our only, in fact, our only back-to-back race winner so far this season. He goes well on road courses. He's consistent enough that I think he can hold it together on a street course. He's going to have Bruno Miranda for company, and Bruno is a very tough cookie, as I know myself because I fought him all race long at Barber Motorsport Park last season. But I think we're going to have Austin Farr come out on top today.
Nuts?
Of course.
I picked Austin Farr. There's no rule saying we can't both pick the same driver, and I think, and given what I was saying just before you made that pick, it's hard to argue against the 52 as one the only road course he made a start for. Obviously joined the lead after the Watkins Glen race, but took a Grand Slam at Charlotte Roval. You can't really argue with that, and starting on pole tonight, maybe looking for a second. It's going to be tough with Bruno Miranda challenging, and of course just the general chaos of the Long Beach circuit, but I do think if I have to make a pick, and I know sometimes I don't want to, I think Austin Farr is the man to do it.
David, do you dare to be different tonight?
I think that we got to look to driver one position behind. Bruno Miranda is the driver I'm looking at for tonight's events. Was quickest in practice, didn't quite get there in qualifying. In fact, didn't even beat the personal best from that practice session. However, when we look at this entire race, it's not just going to come down to that qualifying lap, and I feel that lap 1 is going to change the pace for every driver. Watch out for Miranda to be aggressive early, get the lead, and I think there's a chance that a 37 is a driver to look out for. Maybe take it away from Austin Farr, not have him win back-to-back road courses, and Miranda can return to victory lane to the very track he won at last season. I think it's going to be Miranda tonight.
One thing I've neglected to check before jumping into the commentary booth tonight is which side of the grid pole position's on.
Oh.
Because you want to be on. The thing is, it's a tricky one as to which side you want to be on. Because if you start on the right, you're going to have the shorter run down to turn 1, but it's going to force you onto the outside for turn 1. But then if you start on the left, it's the exact opposite. You got the longer run down to turn 1. But you've got the inside for the first corner. Now, it's tricky to go side by side through turn 1 here, but I think if it's going to happen and it's going to be a successful side by side, I think the only 2 drivers that are going to do it are going to be our first 2 on the grid.
I believe I think the way I watch the standing starts, it tends to be which side of the track is the racing line, because they want it to be the side that's rubbered in, so you have the better grip as the pole sitter. So I think the pole will be on the right hand side here, but of course, because it's a standing start, the grid will be staggered. So if Austin Farr can get a good enough launch, he'll be able to clear and take whichever lane he picks going into turn 1, maybe defend that inside line away from Bruno Miranda and force Miranda to go the long way round if he wants to try and make a move. Although I suspect if he can do that, Miranda will be sensible and they'll live to fight another day, because the outside line on the attack into 1 is a much different story than on the defense.
Speaking of the launch off the start, you may notice that most of our drivers tonight have qualified on the alternate compound of tyres. Typically, when it's a rolling start, you can get away with either the alternates or the primaries, because you're going to have a pretty easy going of getting away from that rolling start on both tyres. The only difference then comes in your pace in the first stint. But as we're doing a standing start here tonight, you're going to want all the grip that you can get. The alternates and the primaries, having that softer compound of rubber on, is worth a good couple of car lengths down towards turn 1. Now, I will note, we do have, I believe we have 1 driver starting on the primaries tonight, and that's Christina Ryan. She claims she's on the primary tyres.
So I've got the timing up here. The cars that put out a quali lap on the primary tyres are the fastest qualifying lap on the primary tyres are Callie Height, Christina Ryan, Craig Forsyth, Nicholas Pressy, and Alex Miller, Analyst Flores, and Carmen Sienna. Quite a few. And of course, Tucker Sawyer and Zach McBride, who did not set laps but will be starting the race. We didn't have any late entries. We have 28 cars exactly, so once again a full field, but no one sent home. Those 2 cars will have free tyre choice because they didn't set a qualifying lap to dictate which tyre they would be forced to start on.
But as I say, you want those extra 2 or 3 car lengths off the start if you can get them. So it's going to make the job of Christina and company a lot more difficult off the line tonight, because they're not going to have as much grip as everyone else, which means they're going to struggle to get the power of these cars down, because these cars are not designed for standing starts. They're built to do it maybe once or twice per race out of the pit box, but you don't see them kind of trying to finesse the clutch on that. A lot of the time, it's certainly in iRacing, it's more of a car drops off the jacks, put your foot down, car rolls away. In real life, we just see them first gear, drop the clutch, and the car spins those rear tyres and just flies out the pit box because they want that rear tyre temperature.
If you've been in some top split races, you will have seen some people optimize the hell out of everything, and I've seen dual clutch launches out of the pit boxes a number of times in this car. It's not something I bother with because I'm too slow for it to matter, but it technically is a thing. But yeah, it's definitely an unusual thing. There's a few different techniques you can take. Some faster than others, some much safer. I'd imagine the cars further back in the field are going to be taking it fairly easy, just trying to get through that opening lap, and so maybe the primary tyres won't be as much of a factor, but with 2 minutes left to go in this warm-up session, we should probably get to a grid rundown, because we're going to have a standing start here, and it's going to come up very quickly when the lights come out.
And as drivers are now practicing their standing starts, we look at Christina Ryan doing just that. Number 80, one of many on the way. Let's take a look at that starting grid from top to bottom and see who lines up where. Austin Farr and Bruno Miranda at the top of the board, with Austin 106.616 over Bruno Miranda's 794. Third place is then there going to be the driver, the 18, and Lily Pelletier Sharp, and Ruby Acosta is in fourth with position number 5, them being Parker Alexander, Frankie Wynn going to be in 6th. 7th spot, that's going to be the driver, the number 8, and Pedro Blabel, and Braden Holt, a row of rookies this season, and it's going to be 9th and 10th, then composed of 2 drivers, one of which being Sophie Connell, the number 69, and then Nicholas Pressey rounding out the top 10 with the first 108 on the board. And looking at the remainder, outside of the top 10, it's going to be Joshua Gaiman. Then in 11th, it'll be Alex Martin, position number 12. And 13th, then and there, is going to be just behind, and that will be Pacey Widgeons with Emily Howe. Then in 14th. 15th place, that's going to be just after Mo Perry. Lilac Zier is in the 89 machine, and just in that spot, it's going to be 16th. 17th position is going to be Briley Wright, another rookie, and Bruce Silva, 18th, to round out the top 20. It's then going to be Christina Ryan and Bobby Blowers with a 109.118. And it looks like Blowers and Ryan, the first 109s of the session, as we have our final drivers just behind.
Grateful Scythe, Bryce Socia, Carmen Sienna, Callie Height, Alex Miller, Elias Flores, Cutter Sawyer, and Zap McBride are final cars on the grid for tonight. And we are gridding up. I think it'll be a 60-second countdown here, so we've got to be ready very soon for this standing start on the streets of Long Beach.
The only car we see is the pace car right now.
David,
you're looking at the wrong track.
Oh, that's why. Well, there's everyone.
David, I'm looking forward to hearing your best David Croft impression here tonight.
Right, we're here, we're now, this is Long Beach, and it's time to just about get things going. Barney the Flagman, top left of the screen, and the pace car is finally out of sight. Now waiting on Bruno Miranda up in front. 56 laps, mandatory compound swap, and for the first time all year here in the Champ Car World Series, we'll be going quicker than 35 miles an hour as you see the speed limit right on the edge of your screen. Getting things going here in California. Green flag is flown, and up in the front, there goes Bruno Miranda.
And that's exactly what we were talking about off the start. Those standing start, getting that optimal grip, absolutely imperative to the start of this race. Austin Farr already dropping down 2 places, and Bruno Miranda has absolutely taken off already. Ruby Acosta getting a brilliant start on the inside as well, makes her way up to P2. Lily Pelletier Sharp starting in 3rd. I couldn't get the car moving, just spun those rear tyres, has dropped down to 7th place as the grid is still shuffling behind. A big gap now, though, has opened up between car 8 of Pedro Blabel, who is, a big gap has opened up between Pedro Blabel and Braden Holt.
And we got a huge stack up. It's going to be all the way, and everyone's involved. Look at the hairpin. It's destruction. 2, 4, 6. More than 8 cars involved, and I'm not quite sure what we're going to do here. Caution is out.
Yeah, that is exactly why we took a standing start instead of a rolling start here tonight. Getting through that hairpin in race trim is hard enough. Getting through it when everyone's checking up into each other. Yeah, that's it. Safety car comes out for the first time on one of the road courses. We're going to see a lot of cars come in for repairs. I believe I saw Lily Pelletier-Sharp missing a rear wing in that one. Yeah, carnage. Hopefully we'll get to see a replay of that one soon.
And we'll get the replay right up as we go through and take a look at that first lap, as now we have some time. You look at the drivers on pit road and pace car there. Everyone gets going. One thing you have to note, besides the initial carnages you see there, it was Austin Farr's start. If we're going to take a look at the entire first lap, that's what really we got to focus on first here. The 52 not getting away right, and a few other drivers having trouble as well. That's where the chaos begins. Then you see drivers on pit road. Then it looks like it's Parker Alexander who goes around. So that's the first wave of trouble, and then we look at what's next. So we'll take a look at the entire lap here and take a look from up top to figure out what really got this thing going. And taking a look throughout this lap, we're going to bring you slowly but surely up to the point of our huge disaster. The hairpin, Joshua Gaiman also went around, and that's going to be the second spin of the night by that point. You see Braden Holt in the mix, and it looks like also Emily Howe and Christina Ryan battling. Now, the leaders by this point were getting up to the final sector, and therefore the hairpin. Now, it's going to get dicier from here as drivers are rushing down under the Leuna Bridge, then hitting the braking zones again for that final sector. Now this is when things get tricky, so keep your eyes out on this hairpin. And as everyone goes by, Frankie Wynn, Nicholas Pressy, and it's Pressy contact with Connell, then Lily Pelletier-Sharp, and it just becomes a huge pile from there on out. And it's destruction with driver after driver involved, and that is exactly how it all goes down. And with that being said, Connell and Pressy, the first drivers to make that contact, and then from there, things continuously get worse. And how about that, as we're going to get things going once again. Sophie Connell and company are going to be collected. Looks like Nicholas Pressy, one of the very first involved. And as such, we're going to return here and taking a look at that incident. It looks like Connell and Pressy made contact, and that's where things get disastrous. And Sophie Connell is still in big trouble as we look live.
Yeah, it looks like a bit of a lockup from Pressy going wide, and Connell tried to take the inside line, not really to make an overtake, but just to try and filter through. And two cars came together, and from there, everyone is just sideways, and that is why I was quiet on lap one. I was waiting for if something was going to happen to put my race control hat on, and unfortunately, we made it almost a lap before it was necessary. And a lot of the field coming down pit lane here for various repairs. Let's say we got about 6 or 7 cars with meatballs who might be done for the day, and a few more with wind damage. They'll be patched up by these crews. Very busy on pit lane. Our top 6, it looks like, are going to stay unchanged, with Bruno Miranda taking that lead on that initial start off Austin Farr, with Ruby Acosta slightly between in second.
Yeah, just something I saw as I was watching through the replay, whilst we're waiting for the world feed to come back into mine and Olivia's respective commentary booths. Braden Holt was able to sneak around that entire incident, just about getting it stopped before going into the back of another car, and able to make up a few places just by being a little bit patient there. So, bravo to Braden.
And it's now an onslaught of people disconnecting. Callie Height, Parker Alexander, and it looks like those are the first of which. We'll see how many else are going to be able to survive tonight. It's already a night of attrition, perhaps, in Long Beach. Yellow flag out for the very first time tonight, and as we get things rolling, it's going to be Bruno Miranda out in front. Then going to be Ruby Acosta, and it's going to be Austin Farr, position number 3. You see Frankie Wynn also there, and Braden Holt rounding out the top 5. have Joshua Gaiman, Briley Wright, Pacey Widgeon, and Emily Howe, down to Bobby Blowers to end the top 10.
Looks like it was just 8 cars that stayed out here. Braden Holt did come down pit road, but didn't take any service, it looks like, choosing to jump all those spots. I think Christina Ryan did the same thing just to try and get an extra lap on the board before retiring the car. But yeah, a substantial number of crews coming down pit road, if nothing else, just to check the damage and see how bad the car is and whether it can continue. Like Trade Forsyth and Lila Steer are happy to continue on with the current state of their cars. Some cars further down the order calling it a night very early, unfortunately.
I've got to say, for the most part, I am quite proud of the field, because the incident itself wasn't really caused by anyone being silly or anyone being too aggressive into the hairpin. It was just an unfortunate, unforced error from Nicholas Pressey, and then that accordion effect we were trying to avoid unfortunately reared its ugly head at the end of lap 1, and we're going to get that rolling start here at Long Beach anyway.
Yeah, fortunately single file this time, which solves a little bit of the problem with the hairpin, but we've already seen, I think we've already seen the problems with it. I'm going to defend that statement from qualifying now, I think.
Well, we always say it only takes one. After one silly start, that's when everyone mellows out, and we.
It wasn't silly though. It was the track that was silly.
No, of course. I was just bringing back stuff from previous weeks.
It looks like, just to give a final rundown, we had 27 cars take the start. Elias Flores chose not to take the start of this race. We are now down to 19 runners after that lap 1 incident. 8 cars currently listed as off the racing surface and likely... oh no, Little Pale Sharp and Zach McBride are running, but 1 lap down after taking his repairs. We have Christina Ryan, Parker Alexander, Mo Perry, Tucker Sawyer, Alex Marsden and Kelly Height still off the racing surface and likely out of the race for good.
Austin Farr then is going to get another chance to try and get a good start here. Bruno Miranda we watched run away in the first 2 sectors of the race. But Austin Farr is going to be restarting right behind Ruby Acosta. So if he can get a good enough start on her, he's going to be challenging Miranda pretty quickly here.
Lights are out on the pace car, so we are about to get going once again after 4 caution laps. We will have 51 to go, and we didn't mention this that much. There was a potential to need to fuel save a touch to make it on just 2 stops of fuel. Pace car has given us that fuel save, so we should be as full push as these drivers dare for the rest of this race, as Bruno Miranda leads the field through this treacherous final sector. The Formula Drift course, of course, is it's known by some, and will lead the field to green once again. We are back racing at Long Beach.
The perfect jump for Bruno Miranda there, who's cleared Ruby Acosta by 0.4. Sorry, by half a second. But Ruby Acosta closes back up again on the brakes. Good little brake zone from him there. Into turn 1. Austin Farr, though, not letting her get away this time. Already tucked practically under her rear wing once again. Taking the apex nicely through turn 4 there. And just sticking with it. Oh, gets a little bit loose over the curb at turn 5. Crucial for lap time, but not if you get it wrong. Just allows Acosta to get away from him a little bit there. Under the bridge we go then. Austin Farr already trying to close that gap back up once again. Getting as tight to those walls as he can. Maybe even using a little bit of overtake. No, not using any push to pass there. Still got 10 left. Peeking out of the slipstream of Ruby just to let her know that he's there coming into the final sector. As he inches closer and closer, trying to set up a move into turn 1 now, maybe.
It's when you mentioned the overtake button, I looked over to my standing screen, and the only driver on less than 10 was Bruno Miranda. I'm not sure whether it's on the initial start or that rolling restart, but at one point in those two, I think he used the button to give that launch, and it's got him to the lead. You know, if you can spend it wisely, that's the best time to use it. You can use it to maybe gain a few tenths on the straight, but if it gains a spot for you, that is what you want. We had Briley right at the tail end of the field with an issue on that restart. Looks like he might be out of this race. Down to 20 runners, 2 of which 1 lap down. But up at the front, these top 3 are broken away. 2.5 seconds between Austin Farr and Frankie Wood in 4th. And it's the 2 road course aces and the hometown hero duking it out for the podium spots in the opening stages of this one.
Looking at Austin Farr in particular, as we just take a look at this 52, you gotta wonder, the first lap making such a big difference in how these drivers approach it. Bruno Miranda, we mentioned, using 1 push to pass so far. I gotta ask, as we're taking a look at this, what is it gonna take for the 52 of Austin Farr? Will we see some aggression in this first stint, or are we gonna see drivers wait around for our mandatory compound swap? Will that even be next stint? Tire strategy going to be different after that first caution, mentioning much more reason to be a push in terms of strategy. But will Austin Farr try to be a bit more aggressive? He tries to go maybe wide there on Acosta, but can't get through. Ruby defending nicely as they head right out of the fountain.
Austin Farr's got a good head on his shoulders. We know he's a very, very smart racing driver. Again, he went to that dominant victory at the Charlotte Roval. So right now he's watching the relative. He's watching how that gap's changing to Bruno Miranda. And I think if he decides that he doesn't need to pass Ruby now, he's just going to stay behind, save some fuel, take a shorter stop when it does eventually come to the first round of green flag stops, and see if he can get the jump there. And at that point, I think is when he's going to begin to push. I think he knows it in himself. He might have the pace over Bruno Miranda. And it's going to be really tricky for him to make a move on Ruby Acosta, because you check up so much into the hairpin, you can't really get a better run than the car in front of you. And on the run down to turn 1, it only really works if you've got a car that's actually faster. But of course, these champ car machines are all identical, are all on fixed setups. So I think the pit stop is where we're going to see the biggest race today.
Bruno Miranda is pulling away though. Now 1.5 seconds, coming up towards 2 seconds on Ruby Acosta, and I think if Austin Farr isn't getting a bit nervous already, this might be the moment where he's got to look for an opportunity. Be patient with it, be safe with it, but if he can find a gap, there was a bit of a peak there, and I think he's starting to press the issue. He doesn't want Miranda to run up into the sunset. He wants to ideally stay within that slipstream range of about 1 second to 1.5 seconds. And he's thinking about the move. You can see it in his driving style. The way he's peeking out into the corners, and maybe this is the time to use a push to pass if he can get a good run out the corner. Ruby didn't get a great launch, but it looks like we can conservative for now. Maybe try and get the move done and save the push to pass. But it's so tricky here because you don't want to go side by side into 1. And as this happens, Bruno Miranda now has that 2 second gap. And Austin Farr is just waiting behind Ruby Acosta, not able to make any headway.
Keeping our eyes on this battle here, the number 52 and Ruby Acosta alike. Taking a look at the rest of the field, and it looks like so far not as many close battles. Craig Forsyth is in one though, with Alex Miller and maybe a few drivers now chasing Miller. Forsyth, Lilac Zier, looks like Pacey Widgeon and Pedro Blabel as well. It's going to be a little more of a train further on back, and as our leaders are getting away, you see the stretch here, perhaps the closest of any group of drivers in this entire circuit. I think the closest of which was previously Braden Holt and Nicholas Pressey, but Pressey dropped back, and it looks like for Nicholas, another race that's been a bit of a downtrend for our former points leader, down to 15th from 10th, and Braden gets by to make up 1 spot here. All of a sudden, it'll be a much further spread between those 2 drivers, but Alex Miller being kept honest here by Craig Forsyth, and for Craig, he's on the primaries, and so is Alex Miller. This is the train of drivers who are largely not on our green wall Firestones, or instead on the primary compound. And with that first incident in mind, a lot of our primary guys started further back, maybe avoided the damage in that initial incident. Now, they've made up spots, and they will be able to use the preferred compound for the rest of the race, almost no matter what.
I cannot overstate this. The gap between Bruno Miranda in first and Frankie Wynn in fourth place, now over 10 seconds. We've only been green flagged for 6 laps on that restart. The field from about 8th down to 15th is pretty tightly packed, but the top 3 have absolutely broken away and are running laps in the 107s while the field behind us is in the 108s, 109 range. It's truly impressive what these 3 drivers are able to do compared to the rest of the field. I think we expected it from Miranda and Farr given their prior road course prowess in this league, but Ruby Acosta has really impressed me so far in this race. Is keeping enough touch with Bruno Miranda. I know we were talking about how Austin Farr wants to get around, but considering that we've not seen much from Ruby on the ovals this season, her pace here has been fantastic. Of course, is her home race. This about 5 minutes from Long Beach track, and that experience, that love of what's familiar to you, I think is paying massive dividends for Ruby Acosta, who is still within 2 seconds. I think Bruno Miranda isn't pulling away the same way expected, and is now catching traffic with Sophie Connell having to take a pit stop in this run. And will be caught very soon, and Lila Zir falling out of the race due to internet issues. Had the car still in one piece after that lap 1 incident, but is now back out of the race and probably falling a couple of laps down if she can get back in at all.
They say hometown advantage exists, and it definitely does. As Zach McBride and Lapa getting involved in a little bit of a fight going on down here, leaving plenty of space for the leaders to get through, but the pace has been really impressive for Ruby Acosta. She's been consistently lapping really close to Bruno Miranda, but Austin Parr's looking to the inside of turn 8 now, gets the move done, pulls in front of her on exit. The lap traffic getting a little bit involved there, just taking Ruby out of the rhythm that she'd settled into and giving that opportunity for Austin Farr to slide through onto the back straight. A brilliant move for Austin. He's got 1.1 seconds to another bit of lap traffic, but now he's looking to close down that 2.6 second gap to Bruno Miranda.
Very smart racing from both cars there. Austin Farr saw the opportunity, made his intentions clear, went for the move, and Ruby Acosta knew that the move was there and chose to be sent by it, and they swap roles now. Austin will try and lead these cars back onto the back of Bruno Miranda, and Ruby Acosta will use this as a bit of draft, a little bit of fuel save maybe, and they're still 10 seconds ahead of the cars behind. They can work as a trio or a duo right now, and then once those final stops are made and all the cards are on the table, that is when I think we're going to see a bit more fighting between these 3 cars. But as it stands, Austin Farr up into second place, back to just once, back to the front row being the same as they were on the start, but in the opposite order. And Ruby Acosta now third with that 10-second gap back to Frankie Wynn, Joshua Gaiman, and Bobby Blowers behind.
Bruno Miranda currently holding that lead, of course, has about a 3-second gap as of last time by. Can Austin Farr gain is the biggest question now. Being held up with Ruby Acosta defending masterfully so far, Austin just made up a 1/10 of a second. So the question now becomes about time. Is it possible to consistently make up that ability lap after lap, put it into motion, as Christina Ryan had a bit of trouble there, getting behind. Christina is 4 laps down. Lappers now in the picture, and for Austin Farr, having to keep these factors in mind very close to the wall there. He'll be at the limit for these next few laps, trying to make up that time to Bruno Miranda. Looks like Lilac Zier back in the session, however, Riley Wright going to be out of it, and Another driver going to be on the way as a result. We have 16 on the lead lap in the first 15 laps of racing. And now Austin Farr going to have a chance to send it deep. Nobody in front. Now going to try to chase down Miranda. And an opportunity to perhaps make up 10th after 10th here before we get down to the pit road cycle. We're 15 laps in, so maybe pit cycle window going to open at about 5 laps time. And then from there, we really got to see how these drivers make the rest of the race go down. As the pit window is coming up, we'll have to discuss more about fuel in the coming laps. 3/10, Austin Farr is consistently gaining.
Yeah, he's wasting absolutely no time trying to reclose that gap to Bruno Miranda. He'll have been absolutely kicking himself for how poorly he got away off the line, but he's making up for it now. Bruno Miranda has been backing off a little bit in the last few laps as Austin Farr's been stuck behind Ruby Acosta. But we've seen his lap times drop now into the 107s, but it's not enough to keep Austin Farr back at the moment, as he did go 0.2 of a second faster and set a PB last time round.
Don't look now, there is a lot going on in the battle for 12th place as Miranda's currently disappeared from the track. Hopefully that will resolve itself in short order. But as we keep an eye on that, there were some very tight battles for the edge of the top 10. A little bit of contact between Alex Miller and Emily Howe, maybe Nectar assisted through the final section. That's like Braden Holt through, who is not wasting any time trying to cut through the rest of the field. And Emily Howe, I think, not very happy with Alex Miller, is going to try and slot through behind as well. And that's it. Bruno Miranda officially technical issues. And that has handed the lead to Austin Farr without any battling needed. And just a disaster for the 37 crew, and not what we want to see at all. And oh no, there's contact in the hairpin. Looks like a lap car that I tried out of the way, and just a little bit of miscommunication. So that'll maybe do a bit of damage to Alex Miller. That will let Emily Howe back through, and everything happening here at Long Beach. You don't know what to expect, and unfortunately a lot of chaos here, even just in the first 17 laps.
We knew it was going to be a race of attrition here tonight, but we didn't expect it to go kind of like that way for Bruno Miranda. Technical issues costing him dearly. The fantastic start he got to take the lead, and then managing the race really well for these first almost 20 laps or so, to then drop out of the session like he did, and just that turn of luck has now gone Austin Farr's way, as he's got Ruby Acosta by 3.9 seconds at the moment.
Yeah, Ruby Acosta, I'm not sure whether picked up a little bit of damage in that opening phase of the race. Has a scuff on the front wing end plate, but potentially just out of rhythm after that overtake happening, maybe losing track of the tyres. But as we say, they're still running more than a second a lap faster than the rest of the field behind, so I wouldn't be too concerned if I was Ruby Acosta, but it does let Austin Farr run away into the distance right now with now a 4-second lead, and unfortunately no one really looking to challenge that with Bruno Miranda out of the session.
The biggest change we've seen all night from the lead. Bruno Miranda out, and you gotta wonder, nobody seems to be safe tonight as another driver disconnecting from the top of the board. So for Austin Farr, now having a chance to control the race, gotta wonder, does anyone have the pace to get to that number 52? Ruby Acosta might have been in prime position to fight for it, but ended up losing the lead just before Austin Farr was promoted to the top. So now for Austin Farr, this race is gonna be much simpler. Perhaps not easy by any means, but not having to go chase up and instead running at a comfortable pace and bringing it down just under the limit. Doesn't have to go 110% to make up that time, and already Farr has put up 4 seconds on Ruby Acosta. Goes to show the pace there, and that number 52 As it looks like one pass going to be Pedro Blabel fading right behind Bobby Blowers. Blowers is the biggest mover of the race so far, from 20th up to 4th, and maybe an outside chance for a podium if there's some troubles up ahead. For Austin Farr, it's going to be smoother and smoother sailing as the mid-pack is still very dense. You look back to a few other fights like Alex Miller and Nicholas Pressey. Looks like Paisley Widgeon there as well. It's a few drivers here in the field still fighting close.
And Pedro Bell does get past Bobby Blowers with a little bit of contact coming through turn 6 there, I believe. This trailing pack has been absolute carnage over the last few laps. We had Braden Hall lose a front wing end plate with contact with a wall. Joshua Gamer from 4th position missed turn 1, had to take to the escape road. Did an excellent flip spin to get it back going quickly, but did lose 2 spots. And now you see trying to fight them back. Right now, it's Austin Farr, Ruby Toster, and Frankie win now with huge breakaways. Frankie more than 10 seconds ahead of this pack in a duel, or more than a duel. It's a real battle for the 4th position, and there's about 8 cars in it if you follow it back far enough. Pacey Wygen trailing Nicholas Pressey and Alex Miller for 10th position, and this is where the action is right now. We'll keep an eye on the front of the field, but I want to see how Josh Gaiman is able to cut back through after that mistake at turn 1.
Gaiman, we know, knows how to wheel, but Bobby Blowers is no slouch himself. Blowers' car painted in the same green colour as on the sidewall of the Waiuli rubber that we're running here today at Long Beach. But Blabel getting through and pulling a gap almost instantly, looking to make up the points lost by Bruno Miranda's disconnection for the team. It's going to be interesting to see what sort of pace they've got here, as he does have a bit of lap traffic. Ooh, Bobby Blowers getting a little bit loose. Actually pits. Blowers the first car to pit under green.
We had Braden Holt come in because of damage, but yes, this is the start of this pit cycle. The cars, especially the ones that stayed out under that first caution, this is where they're going to start running out of fuel. And so we're going to see pit lane be very busy over the next couple of laps. And because those cars that stayed out have to pit earlier, we could see a little bit of traffic come into play, at least for maybe the cars in the trailing pad. I think Austin Farr, Ruby Toster, and maybe Frankie Witt are so far ahead that they can still come out ahead of any cars that made early pit stops. But for the rest of the field, this is going to be a critical phase to get in and out of pit lane cleanly. We mentioned the pit exit line being a factor, and try and pit into fresh air and get those tyres up to temperature to keep pushing along, because we still have more than 30 laps left in this race, and you can't be making a mistake now to cost you multiple spots if you end up in traffic.
Yeah, just keeping an eye on Bobby Blowers on a pit lane exit. I've never seen anyone take it so cautiously, slowing down plenty and giving that little blue cone plenty of space, turning in much later than he perhaps needed to, but gets out of pit lane safely and rejoins in plenty of clean air. He's now a lap down to Austin Farr, but he's got 7 seconds to the car ahead and 8.8 seconds to the car behind.
Ruby Acosta made a pit stop here, rolls out of pit lane, and it's down to 7th place. You see, looks like 46 second total pit lane time, and part of that, a long stop for Ruby, it looks like did have to take a replacement front wing in that stop. So a little bit of damage ailing her near the end of that opening stint. Should be back to full pace now, but does have a little bit of traffic to deal with in the next couple of laps unless they pit in turn. Austin Farr still out on track. No, now into pit lane, but seemed like using Ruby for a bit of fuel save to extend that stint and stay out of traffic, and that could pay off massively here as the rest of the field comes by. Will Pedro Bibel come into pit lane, or will he inherit the race lead? It looks like he will inherit the race lead. And so Austin Farr's Grand Slam might not be for today, but not by much, let me tell you. They are going to be side by side out pit road, actually. And Austin will slot in behind, but... Oh!
Ooh, a little bit of a moment there. Shouldn't give too much damage to the front nose of Austin Farr there, but discretion definitely the better part of valor there as he lets Blable go through. Blable's still owing us a stop, but yeah, a rare mistake from Austin Farr there. It'd be worth it to keep an eye on how that affects his pace in the rest of the stint.
To me, that looks like a similar class of damage
Whoa!
to what we saw Ruby Acosta suffer in that first stint. And it looks like he's struggling to adjust to it, making a ton of mistakes on this outlap. Not getting the tyres up to temperature, maybe just unsure on the throttle. And this could deal Ruby right back into the race. I think Austin's going to have to run this stint out with this damage. I can't see it ever making sense to make this pit stop. But Ruby Acosta is just, I mean, is 6 seconds back with that win replacement. But Austin Farr might need the same thing in his next stop. So that could equalize things again. And this race for the lead has been blown wide open once again as Nicholas Pressey pits and frees up Ruby Acosta. Now directly behind Austin Farr. It's a 7-second gap, but it's a 7-second gap of clean air. And with a now fresh car, Ruby knows what she needs to do. She needs to close that and put the pressure on, because clearly Austin is feeling that pressure on this second stint.
Yeah, smart little bit of driving from Austin Farr there he lost the back end of the car on those stone cold, much harder primary compound tyres over that little bit of a crest that's on the exit of turn 6 and 7 here at Long Beach. Locks down the brakes, locks down all 4 tyres to avoid spinning and losing so much time to Ruby Acosta. He dropped 2 seconds to Pedro Blable, but has already made up most of that time and pulled away from Ruby Acosta. If we theorise he had damage, I think we're wrong in that case, because he is not missing a beat after that half spin.
The tires might have been shredded, but everything else looks to be fine up in front. At the line there for Austin Farr, it's a 108.759 for Ruby Acosta coming through this time by. It looks to be in the ballpark of a 108 as well. It's a 108.636, so relative to Austin Farr, about a 1/10 of a second quicker, just slightly behind Austin Farr is on pace, but with the tire scuffs we saw, it's a wonder that he's not that much slower. 6.5 seconds ahead of Pedro Blable, and Pedro does have to go down a pit road. All the while, Ruby is 7 seconds off, and Frankie Wynn is 25 behind. Frankie ends up being the final driver on the podium when everyone cycles out. 11 drivers on the lead lap as it stands, and it looks like the closest battle might be the final two of which, Carmen Sienna and Alex Miller. Miller going to take it deep into the inside of the hairpin. Carmen Sienna goes wide, and these two drivers at the line were separate by only 4/10. Now, Miller comes across the stripe with an advantage just about half a second, maybe a little bit more. 25 laps in at a 56. We have made it very close to our halfway marker already, and it looks like Miller getting away from Sienna again. Attrition has been a major. Now it's only 10 drivers on the lead lap, going back to Carmen Sienna. Of the 28 we saw, a full house in practice and qualifying. We're down to the best of the best, and those who can hang have stayed on the track.
Yeah, so hard to set up a move into turn 1 out of the hairpin. There's absolutely zero runoff to use. And because of how slow the cars are going, they close up to the point where you can't go out of that corner until the car in front of you goes. And even if you try to on a slightly tighter line, they've got more speed on that slightly longer but less turning angle outside line. So they're getting the better run off the corner. There's no runoff for you to try and put your car in. So patience absolutely vital here, but just as I say, so tricky to set up a move, and Carmen Sienna really seeing how difficult that is.
A few updates of issues in this sort of trailing pack here. We had a spin from Pedro Blable on that outlap that dropped him back behind Bobby Blowers, but further behind. Miranda did rejoin, but then had an issue coming through turn 5 and retired from the race. Emily Howe on the exit of 4 had a spin, looked to hit the left rear tyre and also taking a retirement. We now have 9 cars on the lead lap. Bryce Saucier has just made a pit stop to fall 1 lap down, and Lila Zir, despite that internet disconnect, is now back up to 11th place with the attrition that we've seen not just on lap 1, but just with the challenge of this Long Beach circuit. Lilac should still be on for a top 10 hit.
Looking at the number 89 right now, 2 laps down, but it doesn't mean anyone else won't have any problems. How about that for Lyle Exeers? 16th up to 12th, that's the stat line, but that doesn't really tell the full story. A lot like Joshua Gaiman a few weeks ago, we went down to Las Vegas. Oh, we got trouble?
Label at turn 1 and Nicholas Pressey sliding behind. Looks like an attempt at a move on the push to pass on the outside of Bobby Blowers. And just didn't spot the breaking point right with that additional speed. Nicholas Pressey taking the Formula Drift course in the opening sector to stay out of trouble. You know, I've littered up the tyres with that, but as long as you keep the car in one piece, it's what you need. Alex Miller also into the wall at turn 5. What is going on? It looks like Lilac might be moving up into the top 10 within the next couple of laps. That's 2 cars on the lead lap, both with severe issues, and looks like they're both to be out of the race. Alex Miller with suspension issues and Pedro Blibble missing a wheel.
There's hardly a chance for Pedro to get back here, limping around a lot like what we saw from him in qualifying. He's banging off the wall, and there goes Lyle Exeer. For Lilac, might be a chance of the single digits now to get up into 9th. Keep that in mind, as Pedro is going to have a horrible time going through the final turns of his race. There's Austin Farr, makes it by the lapper, and Pedro now out of the hairpin and going to duck down and in. Slowly but surely makes it through. Alex Miller just disconnected, and Pedro perhaps due to be next. That leaves us with 7 on the lead lap. Going back to Carmen Sienna, we are down to the very few and far between. And qualifying really doesn't seem to have made much an impact. We have 1st, 4th, and 6th for your top 3. Then 21st, Craig Forsyth started in. 20th, Bobby Blauer started in. 10th, Nicholas Pressey came in from. And Carmen Sienna from 23rd up to 7th. And Nicholas Pressey has not had the cleanest of races. He had trouble before, keeping it straight and keeping it out of trouble. He's now up inside the top 10. Maybe a chance at the top 5 when all is said and done. How about the overall numbers tonight? We have 7 drivers on the lead lap, and it looks like Lyle Exeer, despite disconnecting fully, might be back with us here in the top 10.
What did I say at the top of the show? Position through attrition. It rhymes, but there's a reason I remember it, and it's because so often it's true, and especially here, especially tonight, this track is taking no prisoners. And we saw, as Label was limping it back to pit lane, Lilac was taking it so cautiously, not wanting to force a move on a damaged car. Because what worth is a few seconds if you put your race at risk for it? I think we've seen which drivers have had the cool head on their shoulders, and again, despite a 2-lap loss due to internet issues, back up into the top 10 and soon to be 9th place. And at the front of the field, Austin Farr, Ruby Acosta, almost a pit stop ahead of the rest of the field. Frankie Wynn, Craig Forsyth, Bobby Blowers, Nicholas Pressey, Carmen Sienna, and Bryce Socia, who might be one down, but has run a clean race at least. And that's enough for P8 right now. That's all you need to do. Just need to be consistent and not throw your car away making a silly move. Our close battle on track is going to be Nicholas Pressey and Bobby Blowers. But again, are they going to want to fight for much right now, knowing there's cars running laps down to try and pick up spots? Or will they be patient and they're going to wait for the end of the race to settle who's going to finish 5th and who's going to finish 6th? Because it's only 2 points.
Trust me when I say this, Olivia. Nick Pressey is pushing. He has had that tail. He's at the tail end of that IR18 out through most of these corners in the last couple of laps, putting that pressure right on Bobby Blowers, who appears to be struggling quite a lot at the moment, making a couple of mistakes in the last couple of laps. Our previous championship leader, though, looking to try and get that 5th place off Bobby Blowers. Ooh, as he goes a little bit wide and clips the tyre barrier on the outside of turn 8, making a mistake similar to what Bobby Blowers did earlier. But Nick Pressey, with Emily Howe out of the race, is going to want to score as many points as he can to try and claw back that championship lead. The championship lead, though, more under threat from Austin Farr at the moment, but Nick Pressey needs to score every point he can to try and keep himself in this conversation.
Yeah, Emily Howe and Christina Ryan, both multiple laps. Christina Ryan still running, but Emily Howe out of the race, while Austin Farr, Nicholas Pressey, and Bobby Blowers mind, are still running at the front end of the field with Lilacs in not far behind. This is going to bunch up the top of the championship a massive amount. And of course, we didn't have drop weeks coming into play in the coming weeks, but for now, this is going to set the table. And I think Austin Farr might jump into the championship lead if he can hold on here, or if not, will be a couple of points away.
Nicholas Pressey now getting a great run out of turn 6 compared to Bobby Blowers. Had a little peek towards the outside of 7 on the run down to the inside of turn 8, but couldn't make anything work this time around like we saw Austin Farr do earlier. Not getting as good a run off 8 as he might have wanted, but he's keeping that, keeping Bobby... Oh no, he's gone wide and nearly hits the wall, but he's been keeping Blowers under pressure so well in these last couple of laps and keeping the mirrors of that green car full of the blue, black and silver of the Nicholas Pressey eSports, e-motorsports car. But that little mistake in the dirty air just taking some of that downforce off his front wing, sending him a little bit wide through turn 9. And he's going to make up all that time once again, the gap at half a second on the line.
That's the thing about trying to put pressure on. As the pressure builds, it will look for any crack in the armor anywhere to unleash, and it looks like Pressey's maybe starting to find a few traps himself, trying to attack Bobby Blowers here, but really putting it absolutely on the limit.
Oh, he's hit him!
Oh no!
And just like that, it all comes to a head. Nicholas Pressey, perhaps breaking a little bit deeper. Maybe Bobby Blowers breaking a little bit earlier than Nick Pressey expected, but he was so aggressive over the curb at turn 5. Got a brilliant run on the run down to turn 6 and just misjudged it on the brakes. Hits the rear of Bobby Blowers, damages his own front wing and pushes Bobby into the wall on the inside.
That is a meatball flat for Bobby Blowers, unsurprisingly, and Nicholas Pressey actually may be in the first car we've seen forced to take a drive through here due to incident points at now at 18x through a very chaotic opening 2/3 of this race. He'll fall off the lead lap with this, and I'm sure has damage to Fitz as well in his next pit stop, but that'll be no solace to Bobby Blowers, who was having an excellent run that was really helping his championship position, but now going to be one of many cars taking an extensive repair and potentially being out of the race altogether.
And just like that, your previous 7th place driver, Carmen Sienna, says, "Thank you very much, I'll take that," and makes her way up into P5.
You know she'll be happy about that, given Carmen, the paint scheme on that car, I think Carmen's not a huge fan of. But there she is up into the top 5 now, and that will move Lilacs up into P8 by the look of things. And what a charge, what a recovery drive from the 89 car. Really a shout for driver of the day. It's hard to argue against Austin Farr or Ruby Acosta for that, or indeed Bruno Miranda. But when you have that sort of issue out of your control and you keep pressing on and make what you can from it, to me that's the tricky thing to do, you know. I mean, of course, doing what Austin and Ruby doing is a massive achievement in its own right, as that gap has held steady. So whether it's because Austin has picked up some kind of damage on that end plate, or whether Ruby's damage has been fixed, but Ruby's keeping Austin under pressure, and if that stop is longer to replace that front wing, that battle is going to be wide open for the lead in this final stint. We won't find out for another few laps until the pit cycle, but as that battle for 5th place comes to a dramatic end, we could be seeing the sparks of another one for the lead of the race.
In my opinion, I don't know if Austin Farr does have damage. I think we're seeing that race management from him that we saw at Charlotte Motor Speedway. He knows that he doesn't have to push too hard to stay in front of Ruby Acosta. He knows what lap times he's capable of, and he knows what lap times she's capable of. All he needs to do is keep it in a margin where he can maintain that gap, and he's going to comfortably take the win here tonight. He should have plenty of pace in hand that he can turn the wick up if he needs to, as Ruby Acosta burns push to pass to try and close the gap a little bit. But he's just taking his time, doing everything he needs to try and hold on to this lead. But even then, if he does need to take that front wing change, he's got the time gap he needs to still probably come out of the pits with the lead at this point.
Nicholas Pressey with 2 trips down pit lane, 1 for service and 1 for a penalty, filters back out ahead of Carmen Sienna and has to get out of the way because that's now a lap deficit. That one incident has cost Roy Blowers the race, but it's cost Nicholas Pressey an entire lap picking up the pieces of what happened. He should be done on... No, he won't be done on fuel to the end. He'll have to make another stop here. Unless he can do a massive fuel save. So, those are the margins we're talking about. One mistake. It might have been a pretty serious mistake, but that is an entire lap, and you're seeing that as now Austin Farr coming to lap Nicholas Pressey, having a little bit of trouble, a little bit of contact as Pressey hit the wall.
No,
and I think that will be a wind change now.
Yeah, Austin Farr's got damage. The whole right side of his wing is gone. That's going to definitely be a replacement now, and he's just about on the bubble for the pit window here. It's going to be a bit of a struggle for him to get to the end.
Yeah, it'll be a 20-lap stint, I believe, to the end of this race, which is doable, but it's not fun.
No, the
as Ruby Acosta now taking the lead of the race on pit cycle, Lilac Zir leading through the first sector, and I think Ruby's pretty happy to sit behind for now, but I'm also pretty sure Lilac will be happy to move aside if need be.
Well, Ruby Acosta needs every advantage she can get here. She needs to get her car out in clean air to try.
Yeah, this is more trouble now as it's heading. And there we go. Mate, that's the move happen here. And Austin Farr is back out of the pit, but we see that extended stop, 13.4 seconds in the pit lane. Now with a replacement for him in the car, Lutz in one piece and you know, undamaged again, but that was the 5 seconds Ruby Acosta needed. And I think she's now full push if she can in this couple of laps to the end of the stint. Make sure she can get into the window, of course. She'll probably want to go back to the alternate tyres, but actually Austin Farr has stayed on the primaries. Maybe with it being an unscheduled stop, couldn't get it changed over to those green sidewall tyres. But if Ruby does take those alternate tyres, as we expect they are the preferred compound for this race, that could deal this race right into her hands.
Well, this is the tricky bit now, because the last place you want your eyes to be at a circuit like this is looking down at your dashboard. You need to be picking out your braking, turning, throttle up points as early as you can. But Austin Farr is now going to move his eyes away from the racetrack and look at his dashboard to try and follow a fuel number, and it's going to make the rest of this race a lot trickier for him. And it might, you know, break that concentration. It's that rhythm we talked about earlier. If you get out of rhythm at this circuit, you're not going to end up in a bit of runoff. You're going to end up in a wall, or maybe even a tyre barrier.
This race has been turned entirely on its head, and now Austin Farr, who had it all under control, has now dealt the advantage right into Ruby Acosta, who has stayed out and is now well within the window, can safely pit here and make it to the end. So it's a question of when does she choose to pull the trigger, and can she clear Austin Farr? Can she make it so much easier on herself by getting out of pit road and on the racetrack ahead of the 52 car? Or will she have to make the move on the track? Because we can say that Austin has the tyres advantage or the fuel disadvantage, but it's a street circuit. If catching is one thing and passing is a completely different beast. And we've seen that Austin Farr has great racecraft and has managed to make the move on Ruby Acosta. Can Ruby make the move back in the final stint? And will she have to?
Well, the tricky thing is here, Ruby's not going to have much chance to run in any clean air here, because she's still trying to pick her way through that traffic that Austin Farr picked through. Well, Austin Farr came into contact with before he had to pit. So this might cost her the advantage that she currently has, because Austin's had a relatively safe window of clean air to run in after coming out the pits. As Ruby Acosta's burning a push to pass to try and make her way past.
It's Pressey.
It is
it's Pressey who caused the issue with Austin Farr, among others.
Holding her up. He's holding her up here, like intentionally or not. This could be the car that's going to cost Ruby Acosta coming out of the pits in the lead, and she's not going to want that, as she does stay out for another lap, as we're seeing here. A pretty long stint from her here, but this theoretically should be her end lap.
And if it wasn't before, it is now. There's no way to choose this out into the lap after burning the push to pass and not getting anything for it. I think Eva Porter's going to have a very busy night ahead of her whenever she gets to see this race replay. But this is just the truth of street course racing. You're going to have to deal with traffic, and I'm sure Ruby Costa is not impressed at all. But she's going to have to put that behind her. She's going to have to pull down pit road here and just see if she can jump Austin Farr with the work she's done already.
And the big question that we've got to ask here now, with 16 laps to go, 15 laps to go, is what tyre compound is she going to choose? Will she change onto another set of the Blackwall primary tyres? Or are we going to see the Greenwald alternates make an appearance in this final stint for Ruby Acosta here?
We'll have to wait and see. But as that was happening, bad news for Ruby. Austin Farr got to the back of Frankie Wynn, and Frankie did not make it difficult or knew what the stage of the race was. Knew they were on different strategies. As the Ruby Costa pulls away on the green sidewall alternate tyres, Austin Farr is on a shoreline drive on the push to pass. Can he jump Ruby Costa on the exit of pit road here? It looks like he can. But he's now got to defend for the remaining 16 laps of the race with a massive disadvantage. And Ruby spins it on pit exit!
Oh, just like that, that one mistake on pit exit is going to cost Ruby Acosta the chance at victory here. Austin Farr was on the harder, more worn rubber on a fuel save strategy, forced onto a fuel save strategy, which was going to leave him vulnerable to Ruby Acosta at her home race. But she spins up the tyres in a similar fashion to what Austin Farr did at the start of the last stint, loses the back end, and hits her rear wing into the tyre barrier on the exit of turn 1 and effectively ends her race.
It ends her chance at a win. But with how the attrition has been in this race, that car is not being shown a meatball by the stewards. I think it might be extensive bodywork damage, but it might just be bodywork. If she can bring it back to pit lane, she might hunt for a top 5 here. Like, this race might not be as over as you think it is.
No, but one person who's going to be breathing a big sigh of relief is going to be Austin Farr, David.
Austin Farr is so far out by this point, you gotta wonder. At this point, it's all about not making a mistake. The gap is gonna be over 20 seconds for the lead, and it's been hard to say that everyone's been mistake-free. I think everyone's got incident points by this point now. Austin Farr even having some trouble with the front end with Nicholas Pressey. Really, nobody has been away from the controversy and chaos of Long Beach, and that hit and run with Pressey really set the stage for the next 5 or 6 laps, which have, of course, led us here. 42 out of 56, that gives us only 15 laps to go. And tonight in California, we've seen, I think, more chaotic racing than any other track. We've got a total of now 5 laps to go. Frankie Wynn, 40 seconds back. He finds himself there in the number 16. I think Wynn's going to end up moving right back up into that podium, and it's going to be Frankie up inside the top 3, which will leave us with 3 drivers on the lead lap. Carmen Sienna just went 1 lap down, and Ruby Acosta is presumably up next. Podium only, set for a top 3 finish on the lead lap. And Craig Forsyth might be the biggest beneficiary of everyone. Forsyth up in front from 21st. Winner at Watkins Glen hasn't been as strong since. However, tonight, Forsyth proven to be a little bit more meticulous with the strategy, being a little more patient than most others, and as such, he's gained more than anyone else and is now on the lead lap to show for it. Ruby Acosta is still back on the way, and we'll see where Ruby lines up relative to everyone else as Austin Farr comes across the stripe, and it looks like Sienna gonna knock the wall down, hitting the tire barrier.
To perhaps sprinkle a little bit of excitement into the end of this race, we know Ruby Acosta was up there as one of the fastest drivers on track at the start of this one, going a second and a bit faster than any other driver in the field. So with a fresh set of Greenwald tyres, and with a 12-second gap to Forsyth and a 17-second gap to Win, and 12 or so laps to go, is there an outside chance she could still finish second here?
There's an outside chance, I think. It's going to be tough, though. And David did ask if there's anyone on 0 incident points. There's 3 cars that started the race and still are incident-free according to iRacing. Those names are Frankie Wynn, Craig Forsyth, and the unfortunate Lilac Zir. So, she's got to catch these 2 cars, but these are 2 cars that have been running a spotless race so far. We only have, what, 13 laps to go here? You got in more than a second a lap, and maybe that pace that she needs to unlock is going to lead to more mistakes. We've already seen one major mistake from her on the pit exit. She's got to make sure to keep this car in one piece and maybe settle for a 4th place finish rather than overextending at these super consistent podium runners right now. But as it stands, Austin Farr with a 36-second lead after that chaos. Does have to fuel save, but I'm pretty confident he can hit the number now that he has absolutely no pressure. We're seeing his lap times run a little bit slower, so I think he knows what he needs to do, and he's sticking to that. If he doesn't make the fuel number, though, who knows? Frankie Wynn could be dealt into the win here. Oh no, I just made a pun. But I think Austin should know what he's doing there to keep the fuel save on. And so it'll just be that question of, can Ruby close that gap and put some pressure on those 2? Because maybe that's all that's needed to force a mistake.
Here's where an element of multi-classes come into it a little bit. Bruce Forsyth getting a little bit caught up behind some lap traffic who have now
what did you just call him?
Did I just call him Bruce Forsyth?
You did.
Craig Forsyth burning a little bit of push to pass to up his pace a touch to try and close the gap to Frankie Wynn as well as get past the lap traffic, which isn't going to help Ruby Acosta because she's not got many push to passes left to burn with only 4 left in the tank. So she needs to get the lead out now if she wants to try and close this gap. Bruce Forsyth, dear God.
Right over short turn 6 there. I think it's turn 6. I'm not great on the corner numbers here. Did manage to roll it back without any damage. But a few seconds lost, and now being 2 laps down, actually. So that is the pace difference between Austin Farr and the rest of this field. He's managed to run it fairly clean and has put all but 3 cars, not 1, but 2 laps down.
And this is it. That's that race management we were talking about from Austin Farr. He's made a couple of mistakes off the start, and then that little half spin at the start of the 2nd stint. But whereas a lot of drivers, that would get to them, and they might lose their cool a little bit, Austin Farr's managed to keep his head screwed on straight, take a breath, step back, and get back in control of this race. Now, it's safe to say a little bit of luck has come his way with the technical failure on Bruno Miranda's side and the mistake on pit exit from Ruby Acosta. But you can only play with the cards you dealt. He's put himself in a position where he's been able to capitalize on these, I wouldn't say faults, but this poor fortune for the other cars in the field to take and maintain the lead. So you can't fault him for that, really.
The gap to 2nd right now, if we're going to update about that once again, it's 38 seconds. That's about half a lap, a little bit more in all honesty now. Austin Farr is in his own zip code tonight, and there are now only 9 laps remaining as he comes across the stripe. Farr is in full control, and he's found himself there ever since, of course, returning in front of Ruby Acosta, and has now found himself even further from anyone else than ever before. That time by was a 109.448, and it looks like Frankie Wynn within half a second of that pace every lap, but Still, nobody able to consistently put up the lap times that we are seeing out of Austin Farr, and it looks like now it's all about that management as final pit stops are already out the way. If you set yourself up to this point, your race is all but over, except for Ruby Acosta still trying to put some pressure down on Craig Forsyth for Frankie Wynn and the multitude of drivers who are an abundance of laps down. Their nights are all but done. Lilac Zier's made it up into 7th. Despite the disconnection, perhaps the biggest move of anyone in this race that, of course, isn't entirely shown by the timesheets. And right now, it's going to be the 89 and Lilac Zier running there, 16th to 7th. That's a move of 9 positions. Nicholas Pressey has jumped up 6, or rather now jumped up 4 after the incident is dropped back. And Pressey, despite having a very, very tricky night, has made up enough spots to now have a 10-spot advantage over Emily Howe. Keep an eye on that points battle when we exit California and move on to our next race. I think Pressey might be back in prime position to go fight for the title.
I think at the checker, maybe. I think after leaving the hauler, maybe not. The penalties applied in the series tend to be points penalties rather than time or position penalties in a race. So it will be up to the stewards to determine what is to come of that. But for the time being, Pressey is gonna, I think, at least come close to Emily Howe in the standings. Definitely closed up a fair bit. But it's going to be Austin Farr taking full advantage. Also, Zero Instance. I missed him out of the list. Apologies for that. But has also run a clean race and could maybe, if he wanted to, pit for fastest lap on a fresh set of alternate tyres. The only driver who has gone faster was Bruno Miranda by about 1/10.5 in the early stage of the race before that unfortunate disconnect. So I doubt we'll see it. I doubt Austin considers the risk worth it, especially at a track like this. But that's how big the gap is. It's almost at a point where he could get away with that.
Forget Verstappen by 0.3. It's Austin Farr by 36 seconds today.
But that doesn't tell the full story. None of the timesheets here tell the full story. I just don't know what to say at this point.
It's almost a discredit to how well Austin's ran today, and for the most part, how well everyone else has run. It's just Long Beach is a cruel mistress. There's a lot of places where things can go wrong, and unfortunately for everyone, they have gone wrong today. It's just Austin Farr was the only driver that was able to get a little bit of luck on his side to help make up for his errors, and it's showing. 36 seconds ahead of the field, still running one of the fastest drivers on track, and it's looking like he's going to take the win by a very comfortable margin today.
Yeah, of course, Frankie and Craig have run excellent races as well. I haven't put a foot wrong, but it's that combination of consistency and just utter pace that we see from the 52 car. And I think this could be his 4th win of the season. I'm losing count at this point. It's a truly incredible performance he's putting on. With now 6 laps to go in this race, coming to 5 to go. Frankie only just took the start-finish line to start lap 51. Austin Farr is coming through towards the final sector. We do still have that question mark on fuel number. Maybe is gonna need to make a pit stop, but I think he's on the fuel save. I think he's managing this one. We won't know until the end of the race, of course, but that's the only question mark here, and even so, he might have enough of a delta to hold on to the win anyway.
Five laps remaining. Watching on board with Austin Farr right now, we talk about that pace, or you're watching it in first hand. It's going to be inside the cockpit now, and the movements have been so precise for these past 50-plus laps. You gotta wonder, how has he put it down so precisely? Besides that little hiccup with the primary compound when he first got it, it looks like Austin Farr has been mechanical ever since, taking every corner with the exact same point, lap after lap. No other driver has been able to remain within about a second of his qualifying lap However, Austin Farr still in very firm hands relative to everything else. Now, within 2 seconds, it's a 106 that got him up to the top of the board in qualifying. It was a 108 that time by. Either way, Farr is flying, and he's been able to put these laps down more and more and more when everyone else is beginning to fade and feel the fatigue of this circuit. When, of course, everyone else fades away, Austin Farr rising to the occasion, and we saw him dominate at Charlotte as he avoided the chaos. Tonight, Bruno Miranda, his toughest competitor, ended up disconnecting before we saw much of fight, but he's had to face up against some very tough competition in his own right. Of course, lap traffic, Rubio Costa running very well as well, and the tire strategy, a huge deal. Now with 4 remaining, he is the talk of this town, and the rest of the field largely separate. Now Frankie Wynn going to be with the lapper of Bobby Blowers. Moreover, you see a few other battles, maybe Bryce Saucier and Nicholas Pressey, as Pressey now has the number just behind him, 19 of Tucker Sawyer, and it looks like there could be a bit of a fight here, but not many battles for position, most of which just going to be drivers on the same track because of the dominance of Farr. Only 4 drivers remain on the lead lap. Rubio Costa has been able to hold on just barely to a spot on the lead lap as well, coming down the front stretch while Austin Farr heads into the hairpin.
If we can go on board with Austin Farr coming down this start-finish straight and into that turn 1 braking zone, I think I found the answer to whether Austin Farr can make it. Or if Austin Farr knows he has to save, because not much for the coast there. I think he might have hit his number now. For the past couple of laps, I definitely heard the engine drop in revs much slower, lift off the throttle, and then get on the brakes. So I think Austin got fuel to the end here. 3 laps to go, and it's just about keeping it in one piece. Craig Forsyth is now within 1.5 seconds of Frankie Wynn. So maybe a little bit of fight in these final few laps. Both cars on the button, 3 to go for these two. And the numbers on the push to pass. Frankie with 3 left, Craig with 2 left. Ruby has not had the pace to catch up to this field, so this is our battle for the 2 remaining podium positions and what order they'll be in. But Frankie has Craig at arm's length for now as they filter through the fountain section and through turns 4 and 5.
Not much time left to go for Craig Forsyth to make a move on Frankie Wynn towards the end of this race. Frankie Wynn, I think, is going to hold on to P2 for now, unless Frankie makes some sort of mistake in these last couple of laps. Don't want to jinx it, but we know Long Beach has bitten almost everyone tonight, so Frankie Wynn is just hoping that they don't get bitten by this street track again.
We need to ban you from saying "don't want to jinx it," because that feels like the exact words you hear when jinxing it.
I plead the 5th. We're in the US, I can do that.
My eyes here are going to be on Austin Farr, and he comes through the final sector of the penultimate lap, and to just confirm that he will take the white flag on the racing surface rather than in pit lane. The gap is 38 seconds, so I think he would still have a margin to keep the lead if he does need a splash. But there we go, no interest in pit lane here. Austin Farr will come down Shoreline Drive to take the white flag, and it's not been a comfortable race, not by any measure whatsoever. But Austin Farr now has less than 2 miles to go before he can take home his 4th checkered flag of the season and potentially a reclaiming of the championship lead. Claiming?
Claiming, first time.
Is it his first time? Okay, I wasn't sure. I mean, he's been so dominant. I would have thought he had it before, but I guess he joined late, so this is going to complete his charge up through to the lead of the race. Further behind, we do, of course, still have eyes on that battle between Frankie Wynn and Craig Forsyth, but there's not too much to look at. We can focus on the 52, the lead poor racing car of Austin Farr coming through the final sector for the final time, and this is going to be the checkered flag once again.
Coming through the hairpin and gonna make it a narrow entry and exit. The 52 dominant tonight in Long Beach, California, making it down the front stretch one last time. Far wins for the 4th time this season, collecting the checkered flag at our first street circuit. Austin gonna get there. Meanwhile, we do have a bit of a battle, but Craig Forsyth is 2 seconds behind. Gotta wonder, does he have anything left here as the drivers are now making him toward the end of the second sector, closer and closer to our hairpin. It looks like Frankie Wynn has that second spot all but locked up. Not a guarantee though, as we take a look one last time. Wynn gonna make it in, and it's a wide entry to set himself up nice, and Craig Forsyth going to be watching from behind. Ruby Acosta looks to come home with a lead lap finish as well, and for Ruby, despite the troubles out of pit road, it's still a 4th place finish as it will come down to the number 40. Coming home with the checkered flag, and 4 drivers make it home on the lead lap. Austin Farr, the driver on top of all of which, winning by 41 seconds.
I've got to call it out once again, David. We've highlighted it earlier in this race, but I'll shine the spotlight on him again. Craig Forsyth up 18 places from the start of this race. Picked his way nicely through that first lap incident, called the strategy excellently, and had the pace and the consistency to stay out of those walls for the entire distance, won the race of attrition, finishes 3rd place. 3rd place.
I think everyone in the top 5 can really had a race to be proud of there. Just surviving this one. You have to have Bryce Socia finishing 2 laps down, but doing what was needed for a top 5 finish. Nicholas Pressey with issues with Bobby Blowers coming home 6th. Like I say, with that internet disconnection, P7. Then you have Zach McBride, Bobby Blowers, and Carmen Sienna. 7 laps down will be your 10th place finisher.
Despite coming back out on track, it's not going to be enough for Christina Ryan, Pacey Wygant, and Tucker Salyer to get back into the top 10, but the spirit of the race goes to those 3 for sticking it out to the end and trying to recover a bit from this race.
You're looking at Tucker Salyer, who's going to be in 13th. Alex Miller, 14th on today. And Pedro Babel is going to be in position number 16. It looks like, no, 15. As Emily Howe is 1 spot behind. Not a good night for the 83 crew in the points race. So much tighter now. Keep an eye out for Farr and for Nicholas Pressey after tonight. Also, Lily Peltier sharp in 17th, with Braden Holt looking to be then in the 19th spot. It looks like on our order here, if you're looking at the numbers, they're a bit shuffled up. Joshua Gaiman looking to be scored then in position number 18. 20th is going to be Bruce Silva and Sophie Connell. 21st, Bruno Miranda. 22nd, Briley Wright. 23rd, Parker Alexander. 24th, and the final retirees including Perry, Martin, Height, and Elias Flores. 28 drivers, 4 on the lead lap. I don't think we had more than 10 finish the race when all was said and done. And a night of attrition comes to a close here in Long Beach, and we're going to get a word with your top 3 drivers, the best of the best, all night long. And it looks like the number 27 of Craig Forsyth at the bottom step of the podium with a top-rate event. Craig Forsyth from 21st up to 3rd, and we're going to shine the light on a driver who has made the moves, gotten to this point, and how about we bring in Forsyth here to our broadcast booth. He's the only driver waiting right now, so let's get the number 27 in to the ABN studios.
Craig Forsyth, a 3rd place finish, making up 18 places in 56 laps. Welcome back to the podium for the first time since your win at the Glen. That's got to feel good.
Holy cow, it's like all the stars aligned. That was a crazy, crazy race.
I mean, at what point did you think finishing even inside the top 5 could be a possibility? Because you started on the primary compound tire, but then you had that wreck happen in front of you on the first lap. Like, how on earth did you get through that?
Well, I started from pit lane. That's how. I screwed up qualifying. I was just out cycling, burning fuel for the first 15 minutes of the session, and that turned my brain off and hit the wall and damaged my car. So I brought it back in and then just clicked ready to race without even thinking about it. So that's why I qualified 21st. And at that point, I'm like, it's a standing start. This is Long Beach. I'm going to start from the pits and hope for a caution. And that is exactly what got us all those positions, because we avoided the first wreck, we avoided the second wreck that finally brought out the caution. And suddenly, I think when the caution came out, we're 14th. And then when we cycled around once, the guys that pitted in for damage, I think we were in 9th.
Wow, that's a good call on that front then, to start from the pit lane. But even a top 3 is crazy. Like, as I said, at what point was it that you realized that maybe a top 3 was on here?
I think it was when Bruno went out. I don't know. I haven't watched the replays yet to find out, but I figured I could get a top 5. I figured I would be able to get through 4 cars throughout the cycle. I didn't realize the attrition was just going to be as high as it was. And once Bruno went out, that was when I was like, okay, well, there's a chance everyone could crash here, because Bruno, I race him in other seasons, in other leagues. Dude's fast, man. So if he can go out, then anyone can go out. And that's what I think it was. Once I started seeing Frankie and my relative, I was like, okay, I might be racing for the podium. And then lap after lap, I was getting closer and closer. And the podium was not expected, and a pleasant surprise, that's for sure, for the entire 40 racewear team.
To me, it was really impressive that you managed to stay consistent and clean for the entirety of the race, where a lot of your competitors couldn't. Very much learning the hard way after, as you said yourself, screwing up qualifying. So congratulations for flicking that switch and keeping it clean for the entirety of the race. But we have a completely different beast coming up next, Auto Club. So what's the plans for preparing for that one?
One of my favorite oval tracks, so I cannot wait. It's usually a pack race, and that's the kind of stuff I'm good at. But I mean, you also have to bear in mind that if it's a pack race, that's you're rolling the dice. So there's dangers there. It's just it's not concrete walls. It's how close you're racing everyone around you. So I'm looking forward to that. That'll be a good week next week.
Awesome. So congratulations once again on your P3 finish. Again, making up 18 places from where you started. If you need to thank anyone, shout anyone out, the floor's yours. Take it away.
No, I got to thank the whole 40 Racewear team, Jim and everyone there. It's been a sponsor for my team for a long time, and thanks to everyone in ABN Esports who kicked my butt to get me in here in here for the spring to try doing some driving, and I'm enjoying myself. So thanks to everyone, and thanks to you guys for putting on a great show. And it was good talking to you guys. Stay safe.
Cheers, Craig. Congratulations again.
Now it's Craig Forsyth on the move. We've got one of our drivers on the way. Of course, driver, the biggest mover from 21st up to 3rd in a night. Definitely to remember for this 27 team. And next up on the campaign of podium sitters, let's get the driver on the middle step. And it's going to be Frankie Wynn tonight. Let's get the number 16 in the broadcast booth right now. Looks like he's standing by.
Hey, Frankie, this is Olivia from the ABN booth. You got a copy?
Yes, I copy you. Can you hear me?
I've got you loud and clear. What a race that was. On debut coming in. I mean, I've seen you stealing this machinery before, but just talk me through that one. It's a lot of drivers caught out massively, but you keep it clean, keep your head focused, and picked up a 2nd place finish after all was said and done. Talk me through the race. How did it go for you?
Yeah, well, first of all, P2 on my debut. Wow, what a feeling. My game plan going into the race was basically qualify as high up as possible, because I was anticipating a bit of chaos to unfold on lap 1, especially at a tight street circuit such as Long Beach. So, yeah, I qualified, I believe it was P6, and, I did my homework. I practiced the standing starts. I tried to find not necessarily the fastest way to get the standing start, but at least a start where I didn't put myself in the wall. So I believe I ended up P4 after the standing start. So I was in good position already, +2 at the start. And that was the lucky position to be in because I believe right behind me at the end of lap 1, the huge stack up happened at the hairpin. And essentially the rest of the race was just taking it easy. Not necessarily too easy, but going at 95%, not really pushing 100% of the time because I did want to, first of all, finish the race. But yeah, conservative, cerebral drive. That's just my style. I don't do high risk. Maybe not necessarily the most exciting type of driving, but it gets me results when things goes my way. And I ended up staying out of trouble. I believe it was a 0x race for me, which I love. I don't know if anyone sees me on my streams, but I have an earring that says A license 4.99, and that is exactly what I strive for every single race when I get out there. So P2, I'm very happy. I not enough pace to keep up with Austin Farr, but I had enough pace to keep Craig behind me, and he was really making me work for it at the end there. He was slowly but surely creeping up on me, so I was lucky I saved up a few push to pass at the end to use up in the closing stages to keep him behind me.
Well, I mean, I think that really says it all. A really professional drive here to open up your champ car record. That standing stop, I think, really was the key. Just executed pretty much the best of anyone. I think that launch was really something. It put you in a position to stay out of trouble, and from there, consistency gave you everything. On to Fontana next week. We go back to the oval side of things. How are you looking forward to that one? It's a very different style of racing, but
it's a very different style of racing. But I cannot wait for Fontana. I did a few races in official series in the open setup at Fontana, and I had an amazing time. I kept up in front. I'm going to do a lot of the fixed setup races this week on the oval side. I believe it's this week. But Fontana, Michigan, large speedways, 2 mile plus ovals. That's exactly the type of racing that I want out of these cars, these champ cars. It's going to be a good one.
Well, it's great to hear from you. Thank you for joining us, and look forward to seeing you next time. Is anyone you want to shout out? Anyone want to say thank you to? The floor is yours. Congratulations on an excellent P2 finish on debut here in Long Beach.
Absolutely. First of all, I would like to shout out my sim racing team, Mirai United VRT, virtual YouTubers, Real Racing. Thanks for taking me in last year. They're a great group of guys to hang out with. We do all our special events together, so I'm very glad to have a group to hang out with and make good friendships. Second of all, I want to shout out everyone, all my followers out there, all my Twitch viewers, my supporters. Thank you guys. This is essentially the culmination of my streaming, my VTubing journey, to be able to put on good racing, good streams, good league races at the top level of open wheel racing for everyone out there. I'm sorry, I'm getting slightly emotional, but thank you everyone. You guys, without you, I wouldn't be doing this. So I appreciate every single one of you. Thank you very much for choosing to spend some of your time with me and watching me do my thing. So, and also, I want to thank you guys at ABN Esports for taking me in, letting me join the league here, the Champ Car World Series. I greatly enjoyed my first race. I'm looking forward to doing a whole lot more and campaigning the full season next season. So thank you.
Thank you for joining us, and congratulations.
Thanks.
And how about that for our rookie of the race, the number 16, consistent from the jump, and it's a 6-2 move to end up in the middle step of the podium for Frankie Wynn. One more driver who we've seen at the top of our podium week in and week out, and our new points leader, tentatively speaking, after tonight's race here in California. Austin Farr back in victory lane again, and it looks like this team having no trouble after the first 10 laps and pulling through to a dominant 41-second gap to hold off the field and collect a checkered flag in Long Beach. How you feeling after this victory?
Honestly, after everything that happened, I'm just glad it's over and we get out of there with a win.
With that being said, not as much competition for you out in front. Bruno Miranda leading early. Of course, his troubles gave way to your race lead. Ryu and Ruby Acosta battling nicely early on. But from there on out, it became all about strategy. And that's something we noticed with everyone. A combination of strategy and, in addition, of course, attrition. So how is it playing into the mind of both factors as you had to keep an eye on every driver in the field, seeing who would be in trouble, and of course, street tires for the very first time on the platform and the alternate mandatory compound you have to use, which in your case was, of course, a stint or two on the primaries, having to work out with the black-walled Firestones.
Yeah, I mean, it's a classic street race on iRacing. It was just hella attrition and everything was exploding around me. I got lucky there at the start. Well, unlucky. I didn't really practice my my standing start well, and it cost me. I was a little bit faster than Bruno, I think, but it would have been a really good fight. And I don't know if I would have been able to make it happen. Him lagging out definitely bailed me out a little bit there. Getting stuck behind the lap traffic cost me there. I don't know. I don't remember who it was, but in the hairpin, just kind of parked it after the corner, and I wasn't really expecting it. But luckily, I was late enough in my fuel run to kind of just send it straight into the pits, change wing, and basically take my last stop. I had to fuel save really heavy there on the last stint, and luckily I made it with about, I think, a lap or so to spare. I think I can't remember who it was. I think it was Ruby that was behind me. Had an issue on pit exit too, so that kind of worked out for me. The highs were highs and lows were low. I don't know. I'm just relieved that it's over and it worked out for me.
35 laps led on the day, and now the point standings, an even closer battle for you and Nicholas Pressey, making up some of those points, and Emily Howe and you, I believe, have gotten the jump, and you put yourself on top. Now, with that being said, a multitude of different types of tracks to lead us into the tail end of this one, and we're starting with another big oval, Fontana, up next week. Now, we've seen you quick at the ovals, but Fontana, a bit of a different animal relative to every other we've seen on the schedule here, and maybe a bit more preparation for a track like Indianapolis, slowly but surely escalating in size toward the tail end here. What's it going to take to stay successful at Auto Club?
I think Auto Club is going to be a big pack race. I think a couple official series are there this week and last week in the IndyCar. And from my experience, it's just a giant pack race. If it's anything like Las Vegas, if I don't qualify on pole, I'll probably just fade to the back and just kind of let things play out in front of me and be there at the end. Because fighting at the front there in Vegas killed me last time. So I think to maximize points, I'm going to just kind of take it easy and let the race come to me and stay out of trouble.
Just like that, Austin Farr back in victory lane, the 52 team pulling through for the second time on a road course, and this time, street circuit dominance. If you have anyone else you'd like to shout out, make sure to let us know.
Yeah, of course. Everybody at Lead Pod Racing, ABN for running the series. It's fun as always, and you guys on the call.
Austin Farr winning tonight in Long Beach. We thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Just like that, a word from all of our top 3 drivers. 35 laps led for Austin Farr, mixing it up with strategy along the way. Frankie Wynn and Craig Forsyth round out tonight's podium. Now, spoken to our drivers, but I think now it's time to have a little bit of a talk before we move on to our next race in California. Let's wrap up here from Long Beach and do a little review, of course, of what's just happened here. Big shift in the points, and overall, I think we're starting to see who might be the clear championship favorite.
First of all, I want to highlight what a lovely sentiment it was from Frankie, and I think it just goes to show like how important sim racing is to a lot of us, not just the drivers, but us up in the commentary booth as well. Because as much as we know that the cars aren't real, the racing and the emotions definitely are. And it's such a pleasure for me personally to be able to share my passion for sim racing with everyone on ABN, because a lot of us who do this can't afford to go racing, but love motorsport and love participating in motorsport, and this is our outlet for that. Don't get me wrong, sim racing is still really expensive, but it's a hell of a lot cheaper than going out and buying a race car. And I absolutely love doing it, and I love commentating on it, and I love commentating on it with the fantastic team here at ABN. And with that being said, though, back to the race. We knew it would be a really tricky race of attrition, and a lot of our championship contenders got caught up in having incidents here. And this track is very much like threading a needle at nearly 200 miles an hour, but it's definitely always a spectacle. We saw the consistency shine through with Craig Forsyth today, who just kept his nose clean all race. Same with Frankie Wynn, absolutely smashing it out there today. And Austin Farr's fantastic recovery fantastic recovery from his small mistakes has to be highlighted as well. And he definitely came out, the best in all of that. He was able to also adapt really quickly to that late race incident that he had, as he mentioned himself. And it was just it was fantastic to watch, because as quiet as the race was, there were still those highlights that shone through for me. But either way, next week it's back to racing the pack and not the track like we've had for the last few weeks. So there's going to be, as I always say, many different lines to use, lots of drafting, lots of fuel strategy, and it's very much going to open the door for some awesome racing.
Yeah, it's maybe the biggest 1 week change you can possibly have in a racing series. We're not going that far, we're staying in the state of California, but from the tightest track you can imagine to 5 lanes of highway, the now departed Auto Club Speedway. And it's gonna be, I think it's gonna be a good one. I know there was concern from Austin about it being maybe a repeat of Las Vegas, but I've given it a try in officials as well as Frankie, and as long as the California sun comes out to play, that's going to make it very tricky to handle, and I think to be a very dynamic race. That will give these drivers a lot of chance to show their skill, and I'm just going to say it, Taylor. I really enjoyed doing the top line when we were there.
Yeah, top line gang.
But now, 1 week of waiting, the biggest change perhaps all season long coming up. We'll be back in Fontana, one of the most exciting oval circuits as we remain in the state of California. However, for tonight, we're saying goodnight from the Long Beach Street Circuit. You've been watching the ABN Long Beach Grand Prix, and the Champ Car World Series is set to continue next Wednesday as we are now heading into the final leg of our championship. We thank you all for watching live on ABN Esports. I've been your host, David Kreutz, alongside Olivia Hayward and Taylor Mills. If you enjoyed tonight's content, make sure to leave a like on the video on demand, which will come up within the next 24 hours on YouTube. Follow on Twitch. We've recently surpassed 1,000 followers, and we'd love to have you join the ABN family. All of our information provided in our Twitch description for every broadcast. If you want to join the ABN family, make sure to Of course, check out the social links on your screen right now and leave a follow. We'd love to have you join the fun here in the Champ Car World Series. We'll be back next week in Fontana, so mark the date, April 10th at 8 o'clock Eastern, as the Champ Car World Series heads back to the ovals for the final races of Season 5. We'd love to have you there as well. Thank you for watching the ABN Long Beach Grand Prix, and we hope you have a fantastic night.